Okay, good evening everybody. We are going to get started here. This is Tech Thursdays, episode 76. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the PlayStation 5 Pro because it was officially announced by Sony earlier this week. We may also talk about NVIDIA's upcoming RTX 5080, which will be featuring their new Blackwell architecture, as well as maybe AMD's RDNA4. And then finally, we'll talk about Intel's Arrow Lake, which is the next CPU generation from Intel, which is going to be using TSMC's N3 node. So we got a lot to cover on this episode. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the PS5 Pro because that was the really big announcement that kind of took the media and the public and the gamers by storm with the massive announcement of, you guessed it, vertical stand sold separately. Yes, that's right. The vertical stand for the PS5 Pro is sold separately. On top of that, it is going to retail, as we had said previously, if you've been watching my live streams, it would have been no surprise when Sony dropped the price at $699, because I have been saying this for months now that the upper bound limit in terms of the pricing could be $700 to $749. So they went with $699, so they were right in that range, because the original range that I had specified was $599 to $749. They went with $699, so they kind of landed in the middle to the upper limit in terms of what they could charge for this console. But we're going to talk about this console in depth. So if you're new to the channel and you like these sort of topics, if you like these in-depth tech coverage type things, anything PC DIY, gaming, console gaming, PC gaming, etc., even mobile gaming, we are going to talk about the Switch 2 next year. So we will cover that as well, although Nintendo's kind of been out of it for a while. So we'll see what they do next year to shake things up. But yeah, get subscribed to the channel. We do these live streams every Thursdays at this time. So depending on where you are in the world, if you like the content, get subscribed, hit that bell icon so you're notified when I go live. Sometimes we do weekend live streams. It's not guaranteed every weekend. Sometimes I'll do like a Friday evening stream or a Saturday evening stream. Sometimes we do special streams like we did for Gamescom, for example. But yeah, so I guess that's going to be it. Hey Cam, hey Rich. So we're going to go ahead and look at this article from WCCF Tech, which focuses on the comments from an industry analyst. So I'm guessing this is an analyst for, well, let's kind of look at the article. But the article says, it states that the PS5 Pro, even at $700, could sell 13 to 15 million units in total. That's kind of the estimate based off of this analyst. That being said, it is considered a product from Sony for their super fans. So whatever that means. So I guess that means the Sony diehard or the PlayStation ecosystem person who has a PSN subscription. Doesn't really matter if it's the Essentials or the Plus or the Premium. It's basically for that crowd, that target demographic. I think it's the same sort of market that bought the PlayStation. What was that thing called? The remote display thing that you could play. It's not a PSP or a PS Vita. It was like a remote. I forgot what it was called. PlayStation. It wasn't PlayStation Display, because PlayStation Display was like a 3D display from like 2011. But they had something. There was some kind of peripheral. I can't believe I'm forgetting what it's called. But they had some kind of peripheral that you could basically play your PS5 games remotely over Wi-Fi or over the internet. That thing was pretty successful based off of the volume of units that they manufactured and the units that they actually sold. And then the other one would be probably PSVR 2. Although PSVR 2 does work on PC now, they did open it up to the PC platform, which I had been saying a year ago that they should have been doing that from the start, because they would have sold basically their entire inventory of PSVR 2 if they had made it available on PC from day one, or at least from within the first 4 to 6 months of the launch of the VR headset. So, but according to this article, they could sell 13 to 15 million. So despite the kind of negative reaction from the press and all the, I guess, the target demographic for people that were kind of criticizing this thing on Twitter, everyone was kind of weighing in on, oh, it's too expensive, this is a fail, blah, blah, blah. The naysayers, regardless of what those people are saying, I have a feeling this thing is going to sell out in the initial launch. Like, if we go by history, anytime some expensive Halo tier product, like we've seen this with the RTX 30 series back in 2020. We saw this with the original PlayStation 5. We saw this with Series X when it was new. We saw this with RTX 4090 when it first launched. And that thing is way more expensive than the PS5 Pro. And that isn't even the entire computer. That's like one part of the computer. So, yeah, we're gonna dive into this a little bit. We're gonna try to price together a PC equivalent of the PlayStation 5 Pro to kind of see, is it actually possible to get the same value if you're trying to build a PC where you're basically capped at like $700. We're gonna try to see if it's possible to do that. Hey guys, good evening. So, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and read. So WCCF Tech reached out to Rise Elliott, a game industry analyst at Media Research. Elliott provided a detailed answer explaining why this is a product for super fans that could, however, end up selling between 13 and 15 million consoles by the end of this generation. So, yeah. So he thinks that it can sell up to 15 million units. So the remainder of the PlayStation 5 generation, it's going to run from 2024 up through, I would say, around 2028. So we have about 3 to 4, maybe 5 years of the PlayStation 5 generation. After that time, at some point around 2028 or 2029, maybe even late 2027, we could see Sony launch the PlayStation 6. assuming they're going to launch another console. Now, they may end up, well, see, I don't know. I think there will be another console generation. I don't know at this point if Microsoft will be part of that generation. I think Sony could end up being the only sole survivor of the traditional high-end console gaming market, whereas no one else is basically in the market anymore, and Sony's just kind of the winner by default at that point. Which will be interesting to go down in history. You know, if 20 years from now, looking back at the console history of gaming and seeing like, oh, you know, it started with Nintendo, it started with Atari, and then kind of there was these other players. Sega got in, you know, the Sega Saturn. Sony got in with the very first PlayStation, and then Sega eventually bowed out with the Dreamcast. Then Microsoft got in with Xbox. Nintendo kept going with N64, GameCube, Wii U, Switch 2. So it's like eventually, but see, they diverged, right? Because Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft used to be competitive with each other. I remember the days when E3 was a really big deal. And this was around probably like, what is this? This is at least 10 years ago at this point, right? Like, well, more than 10 years ago. I remember when the PlayStation 2, the original Xbox, and the GameCube all were competing with each other. All had similar multi-platform titles, and all three of them had good exclusive games. So it created the console wars. You know what ultimately created the console wars and fanboyism was exclusive games. It was always the exclusive games. Only on PlayStation 2. Only on Xbox. Only on GameCube. Those were the days that really created the console wars. And then it persisted with the Xbox 360 and the PS3. And then the Wii was kind of there. It was still, Nintendo was still competing with Sony and Microsoft, but in a different kind of capacity, from a different angle. They were trying to do the whole like family-friendly, out in left field, innovative sort of design, and then Microsoft and Sony tried to copy them. Not copy them, but they tried to do their own thing. Like, remember Project Natal on 360, which became Xbox Connect, and then Sony did PlayStation Move, which was like a ripoff. The Move controllers were like a complete ripoff of the Wii remote. You guys remember those days? and then it went, and then Nintendo went Wii U, and then PS4 came out and Xbox One came out, and then I would say around that time, that was the end of Nintendo's attempt to try to keep pace and compete directly with Sony and Microsoft. I think after the Wii U, Nintendo just kind of bowed out at that point. They like tapped out, like, nope, we're going to go do our own thing. Peace out. I'm going to go make the Switch now. You guys can go fight each other over there. I'm just going to sell Mario and Zelda games, and everyone's going to be happy with that. That's basically what Nintendo did when they launched the Switch back in 2017. So they were kind of doing their own thing, and then Microsoft, as you guys know, that brings us to where we are today. Microsoft launched Xbox Series X, Sony launched PS5, and then there was also Series S, and the digital PS5, and then now we have, you know, like Microsoft is at the point where they're like, well, we have Xbox Game Pass now. Do we even need to be in the console business? Why don't we just push everybody to the cloud and subscriptions and recurring revenue and cash flow and all this kind of good stuff that all our shareholders want to see? That's kind of where Microsoft's coming from. That's like their new approach. So when we talk about the PlayStation 6 and the next generation of consoles, we may end up with only one next generation console, that being the PlayStation 6. Because as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft basically exits this might be the last time you guys see an Xbox console from Microsoft, and they're done, and it's just going to be Sony by themselves, and they're going to be all alone, and then eventually they're just going to probably have to transfer everything over to cloud and follow suit with what Microsoft is doing, and the consoles will go the way of the dinosaurs at some point within the next 10, 15 years, I would imagine. So just because of looking at how things are playing out with this current generation. So I don't know. What do you guys think in the chat? HTZ actually did a PC equivalent in performance to the Pro. It was a little over $1,000. You can build a PC. Yeah, we're going to try to do that here in a little bit. Valve could launch a Steam box. Valve has been trying to do Steam box for so long, but I think Valve kind of gave up on that. And they're just like, we're just going to let people do that if they want, but we're just going to sell, like, handhelds for some reason. I don't know. Like, Valve went handheld, and then, like, other people, like Asus. So here's the thing about that. It's interesting seeing the giant traditional console, like a PlayStation 5, slowly die off. It's dying a slow death. The traditional gaming console that's synonymous with sitting in the middle of the living room, in the entertainment theater room, whatever, it's slowly going away, yet somehow you have ROG Ally, you have the MSI Claw, you have the Lenovo Legion Go, you have all these like handhelds that are like just popping up out of nowhere, and it's like, wow, they just showed up because Steam made, like Valve made Steam Deck, and everyone's okay with that, and it's like way better than the Switch from a hardware standpoint. And yeah, it's like, wow, all of a sudden the console, like the mobile console market is thriving. It's like it's growing. Whereas the traditional box console that sits on a desk or like a home theater display, like that's actually dying off, which is very interesting to see. You can't cheap out on SSD. Yeah, yes, you're right. You're right. We are going to do that. In fact, maybe we should do that right now. Oh wait, this is from last year. Let's do PC part picker. Now let's do a new list. Why is this? Oh, this is the old list that we did last time. It's actually still on here. All right, how do I... Is there an easy button to clear this all out and start all over? This is... How do I delete all of this? Like, is there a way for me to just remove this? Anybody? How many units has the Steam Deck sold? Not as much as PS5, but they have sold quite a bit considering what their edit part list. Oh, okay. Okay, just get rid of all this stuff. Yeah, let's try to build a PC that is equivalent to a PS5 Pro. Because I was surprised, everybody was complaining about the PS5 Pro's price. Even though I told... Well, okay, obviously, this is a small YouTube channel. I understand that not everybody watches my content, but I wasn't surprised at all. When I saw the $699... I was like, I called it. I was just smiling when I saw. I wasn't happy about it, but I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, I said it was going to be. Remember what I said, guys? In the most recent stream, I said it would be $649 to $699. That's what I said. So it ended up being on the upper bound of what I said, but I called it. All right, so. Okay, let's start over. So, yeah. So the CPU, the closest thing that you can buy new is probably going to be the 5600X. So this is $124, or the 5600G. That's actually more, so we would go with this. And the reason why we would go with this is because this saves money on the box cooler. This includes the Wraith cooler. So if we get this, that takes care of the CPU and the CPU cooler. So now we don't need to pay for a CPU cooler. Now we choose a motherboard. We choose the cheapest motherboard. This ASRock will do perfectly fine for $60. And then, okay, here's the thing. The storage drive, we'll come back to memory. The storage drive must be a Gen 4 2 terabyte drive. It must be 2 terabyte. It must be Gen 4. And it must have a 7,000 spec read speed, which means it has to be a high-end Gen 4. This is a hard requirement. So you cannot, like, skimp on this. This is required. So we're going to do, what is it, 1,000 to 2,000 or whatever. Just set it to, like, this range, I guess. Yeah, so 2 terabyte. And then it has to be, whoops, it has to be, well, $3,000? What? No, not that much. Like, what's the cheapest for, like, 200? Okay. SN770 is probably not going to be fast enough. Wait, why are these hard drives showing up? Okay, and Gen 4 X4. Okay, let's see. What is this? Team group. Hold on. Cheapest price. Let's go by the cheapest price. We gotta find the best SSD for the cheapest price. That actually fits the spec. This Corsair fits the spec. Oh, you know what? It has to have a heatsink. It has to have a heatsink because the ASRock motherboard that was only $50 doesn't have heatsinks. So what is this? Like, what are the specs on this thing? Is this fast? Will this fit? This looks like it's too tall. No, Matt, you're wrong. It uses 7,000. It has to be 7,000. Because if you stick a 7,000 in there, it will say like 6,600 something. So it has to be a 7,000. Okay, so it must be 7,000. That's hard requirement, which means that will take as much out of the budget as necessary to meet the requirement. So I think this will work. Let me see. I wish this website showed the actual speeds. Because now you just end up having to... Okay, fastest sequential read it. Yeah, this is terrible. This drive's too slow, unfortunately, so we can't use that. It has to be faster than that. That won't be fast enough. Okay, where's Inland? Inland... Where's Micro Center? I know Micro Center has the Performance Plus will do. This one will do it. Done. Oh, wait, it doesn't have a heatsink. It has to be the one with the heatsink. Because the motherboard doesn't have a heatsink. That one would work, though. The Inland Performance Plus will meet all the requirements. It just has to... Oh, there we go. I found it. This is the one. This is the one. This is the exact one that I have in my PlayStation 5 right now. So this one I know will meet the spec. Let's see. And it doesn't say the spec. This is the one from Micro Center. Micro Center, for those that don't know, Inland is Micro Center's brand. This will definitely work, and the heatsink is actually it's the actual specification from Sony. So this one, we're gonna add this one. There, that takes care of it. Okay, I think that's a decent price for that type of SSD. I was trying to find one for like $125, but that one has the heatsink, and I know that one will work. Because the problem is this motherboard. Look at this motherboard. This motherboard is pathetic. It doesn't have heat sinks. Not only does it have no heatsink for the M.2, it has no heatsink on the VRM. But who cares? That's fine. Okay. I'm not Inland biased. I'm just saying that this... Is there a cheaper SSD? Is there a cheaper SSD that has the same performance specs as this? Because if it's not cheaper than this, we're not going to get it. See, that's the thing. It has to be cheaper than 150. And as far as I know, this one is the cheapest one that fulfills the requirements for the direct storage. Bump up to a decent B550. Why? Remember, we cannot go over $700. The minute we go over $700, it's a complete fail. Oh, the motherboard has to have Wi-Fi. This doesn't have Wi-Fi? Oh, you're right. Oh, this has to have Wi-Fi. You're right. Okay, we can't use the motherboard. Oh, this is gonna get really hard, guys. This is gonna get really difficult. Okay. We have to find a motherboard that has Wi-Fi. Oh, well, this is $100. What's the cheapest one? Does this have Wi-Fi? That does not have Wi-Fi. Does this have Wi-Fi? Man, none of the sub $100 motherboards have Wi-Fi. It just has to have Wi-Fi 6E. Wi-Fi 6E is enough. There's none of these motherboards. There's no motherboard on this list, as far as I know, that has Wi-Fi 7. The Wi-Fi 7 is coming out on the... First of all, if we're going to go with Zen 3, there's no Wi-Fi 7 on Zen 3. So we're going to have to go with Wi-Fi 6E. And that's probably going to be one of the, like, $150 boards. ASRock B450M. We already clicked on that. That's what I chose originally, and we can't use it because it doesn't have Wi-Fi. As someone correctly pointed out, it has to have Wi-Fi because the PlayStation 5 Pro has Wi-Fi. So you'll fail the test if you don't include Wi-Fi on your answer. There's no partial credit. Okay, this one has Wi-Fi, and this one's $75. I'll probably go with that one. It might work fine, but you won't get anywhere near the speed. B550F? Hold on. This one's good. How much was that one? That one was $75. Is the B550 Asus the $75? The whole point is you gotta go with the cheapest one that fits the spec. Oh, somebody was saying... RK was saying you have one on an old computer and it works fine. Wait, what? What, the Wi-Fi? I kind of think that Gigabyte was the best one. That one had Wi-Fi. This doesn't have Wi-Fi. Where's that Gigabyte? This one? Oh yeah, look. Look, check it out. There's Wi-Fi. It's even in the product name. It's even in the product name. There. It has no heat sinks. Who cares? There's no heat. It doesn't need heat sinks. We're buying an SSD that has a heat sink. It doesn't have to have a heat sink. I think this is it. This is the one. Okay, that's the one. There. So that's $350. That's already half of the budget. That's half of the budget, and we don't have memory. So here's the thing. 16 gigs of memory, the cheapest one we can find. That's it. I don't care what the speed is. It can be 2666. It doesn't have to be 3200. What is why is it showing these weird speeds? 2.8. Cheapest one. Oh, this is $27. This is $27. This is $3,200. $3,200 for $27? What? Man, and here I thought DDR5 was almost as cheap as DDR4. DDR4 never ceased to amaze me. $27.97 for 16 gigs of DDR4. That actually runs at 3200. Does this actually run at 3200? 1.2 volts? Man, DDR... This must have, like, super loose timings, though. Just get this. Okay, $30 for RAM. Okay, that saved a lot of money on the RAM. I'm gonna admit, that saves a lot of money. The memory bandwidth is shared between the GPU. It doesn't matter. We're not building a console. We're building a PC. We're building a PC that has equivalent performance to the PlayStation 5 Pro. Obviously, it's not going to have unified memory architecture. Okay, so We don't need a hard drive. Now, this is where it gets hard. This is where it gets hard. What is the video card going to be? So I'm thinking 7700 XT will be the closest thing. 7700 XT. Alternatively, the RX 6800. The problem is the RX 6800 will not have anywhere close to the ray tracing performance of the PS5 Pro. That is the reason why, in my mind, the 7700 XT makes more sense, because it'll have better RT. It also uses less electricity than a 6800. So it would have, we could cheap out on the power supply if we go with a 7700 XT. I think you can get away with like a 600 watt power supply if you go with the 7700 XT. But if you go with the 6800, I don't know. I kind of think you would need like a 700 or like a 650, 750 watt or something for that GPU. So keep in mind, we got to add all the other parts. You can't just be like, oh, here's an unbuilt computer and this is the equivalent. No, that's not how it works. It has to be the complete package. So I think we're going to have to go with this, because this is the closest thing to the PS5 Pro in terms of the rasterization spec. Alternatively, this one has the 16 gigabytes of VRAM for $360. You can't compare the core count. NVIDIA only for ray tracing. What would be the NVIDIA card then? Would the 76... That's too slow. 7600X is too slower than the PS5 Pro. But RT is faster than RDNA4. So it cannot be the... I think the 7700 XT is the closest thing, guys. 3060 Ti... Why? That's like even worse. 3060 Ti is worse. Why would you go with... That's even weaker. No. 7600X is a great... Oh, you're talking about the CPU? For some reason, I thought... When you said 7600X, I kept thinking in my mind 7600 XT. I thought you were talking about this. I thought you were talking about the graphics card. I didn't figure you were talking about the CPU. No, but see, like this graphics card is weaker than... Okay, what about this one? 7800 XT? How is that? That's priced too high. See, we're already like at the halfway point. This GPU is going to have to be no more than like $300. I don't see this working. Maybe, okay, the 6800... The RX 6800 is 360? 360? Hold on, if we go with this... already failed. Already failed. That's already failed. This is already a fail. It's already above $700. The maximum... It cannot exceed $699. It cannot exceed $699. That is a hard requirement. So, like, this is a hard requirement, and the SSD being at the spec is a hard requirement. So you cannot skimp on those. That's the reason why, like, I don't care the fact that this is a 6-core, because nobody called it out. It's like, why are we going with a 6-core when the PS5 Pro has an 8-core? Well, that's because you have to remember that the CPU is equivalent of a 3000 series Ryzen. So this is a 5000 series Ryzen. So a 6-core Zen 3 is going to outperform the 8-core Zen 2. So it kind of makes up for the difference. The thing is, can you even buy the 30... Like, is Zen 2 still available? Is this even a thing? Can you actually buy this? $90. And it comes with the cooler. Yeah, this comes with the cooler. Wait a minute, hold on. So if we get this... Okay, look, it's closer. It's closer. So maybe we do have to go with Zen 2. Zen 2, $90. Something has to get cheaper. It's still there's no case. Where's the case? Where's the power supply? Where's the case? Where's the power supply? To even the odds, we're not going to include the price of Windows. Like, that's the only thing that I will compromise on. It's like, okay, because if somebody wants to install Linux, they can install Linux for free. So we don't need to include the price of the operating system. However, it has to be a complete thing. It means you have to include a case, because you cannot just be like, here are all these random parts. They're gonna sit here on the table and be at risk of ESD shock and damaging all the hardware. You can't. That's not how it works. So it has to actually have a case. It has to have a power supply, and we're already over $700. And we're all the way down to a 6-core Zen 2 from 2019. Like, do you guys see this is becoming a lot harder than I thought? He has to have a better cooler since no, that's fine. This is fine. The CPU cooler is fine. You have to remember, HDZ, that the PS5 Pro has a unified thing. Both the CPU and the GPU are being cooled by the liquid metal. The fact that this is like two separate things, no. The box cooler, the Wraith cooler, is totally fine for what we're doing. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage with Zen 2 because of available GPU overhead that often... Yeah, but the thing is, you can't go over $700. So how are we gonna put a higher end CPU and fall under $700? See, no, I'm well aware of that. Right now we're just trying to stay under the price point requirement, because this is already out of requirement. Like, this is out of spec. This is out of spec. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is like really hard to do. Zen 2 is in the Pro. Yeah, Zen 2 is in the Pro. So technically, this CPU is more in line with the actual hardware versus like the original one that I had in there. No used parts. No used parts. You don't get warranty with used parts. No, sorry, no. It has to be brand new, and because if the PS5 Pro is coming out, PS5 Pro is going to be brand new with the full warranty. So this PC has to be brand new with the full warranty. So no, we're doing an apples to apples comparison. This isn't going to be like, oh, you can skimp on buying used hardware to try to match a PS5 Pro. That doesn't make any sense. That sounds ridiculous. It has to be brand new. Like, who would do that? Like, that sounds retarded, right? Like, can you imagine if somebody wanted to start a business? If I wanted to start a business right now selling like PS5 Pro equivalent pre-built PCs, like, I'm not going to be putting used hardware. Like, what is that? But anyway, the point is, guys, we're running up against a problem where we're already over the price point of the Pro, and we haven't even added a power supply. We don't even have a case yet. Somebody was mentioning game controller isn't even in this thing. Like, I don't even know if we're going to even bother with the game controller at this point. Like, this is kind of hard to do. Fans. Well, the case will take care of that. See, okay, let's put a case. Let's put a case in. Cooler Master Box 300L. This thing is $40. It has a fan in the back. It probably has... I actually kind of like how it has the buttons right here like that. That's interesting. And then it has the mesh in the front. That's good. So it's not going to have turbulence. So yeah, I'll just get this. This is cheap. Okay, that takes care of the case. That added $40. Now we need a power supply. The power supply needs to be like a 600 watt power supply, because we need to basically save as much money as possible. So I'm going to put this no higher than 750. 750 is going to be the maximum. Let's go to the lowest price possible. 500 watt. No, that won't work for the GPU. It's probably going to need like a 600. What is this? Do I trust this? Is this 80? This is 80. This isn't even 80 plus bronze. This is 80 plus certified. This isn't bronze. This isn't silver. This isn't gold. No, this is like the tier below bronze. So there's titanium, platinum, gold, silver, bronze, this. And then after this, there's nothing. So I guess we're going to go with this. Okay, there we go. That takes care of that. That's $40 for a 600 watt, 80 plus certified thermal take. It's under 800, but somehow we need to cut $80 out of this. And the only thing I can think of is the GPU. So people were saying like get NVIDIA for the ray tracing. Okay, can we find an NVIDIA card that's $80 cheaper than a 6800 that performs the same? What will be the closest GPU? The RTX 4070? The RTX 4070 is way too much money. Way too much money. So the only one I can see is the RX 6800. The RX 6800 is $360. The 7700 XT is more money. It's $379. So, yeah, I don't know how this is going to work. RTX 4060 Ti. RTX 4060 Ti is more, it's like slightly more expensive. So, I don't know. This is kind of, yeah, this is starting to look really hard to do. We're going to have to probably keep this and try to shave off money from some other thing. Like, possibly go with a cheaper SSD, but the SSD needs to be of a certain read speed. This is hard. You know what's making this somewhat possible? The fact that we found 16 gigs of 3200 RAM. Oh, you know what? Okay, what if we go with RAM that's not 3200? Like, just go with some cheapo 2133. DDR4 2133. Or some nonsense. Like, get some super slow DDR4 2133. This is more expensive than that 3200 kit? $2,400? 2666? What? That one 3200 kit was the best deal? That was sub $30. What about 1866? Oh, there isn't even anyone like that. That's actually the lowest speed. 3197. That's more expensive than this. This is a steal of a deal. This stuff is 3200 and it's beating the price of the 2666. So we're stuck with that. Okay, well that's bottomed out. Let's see, is there a way to make the motherboard cheaper? Because it has to have Wi-Fi. The PS5 Pro is a wake-up call for poor console. Well, see, like, I think we're starting to see that Sony's price point actually is justified, considering what you're getting. This CPU isn't even, like, this CPU is only 6 cores. The Sony console has 8. So this isn't even the same, like, technically, we would have to go with, what, a 3700X? A 3700X is way more money. $150? I think this is the closest. Is there such a thing as a 35? Oh, but it's not for sale. So yeah, I think this is the cheapest one. The $90 3600 is really the closest thing. Used is not allowed. You can't go with used and then expect the PS5 Pro to be brand new. Like, that's not how it works. That's not a fair comparison. So it has to be brand new. Yeah, but was that a thing? This is all that they've got. They've got 3700X. 3700X is $150. That's not gonna work. You need a Wi-Fi 7 router to take advantage. That's what. No, all we gotta do is check the Wi-Fi box. We don't know if Sony is taking a loss yet. Yeah, but see, we're like $83.90. We're technically $83.91 over. This is already over budget. This is over. I can't believe we're already over budget, and we have like, we're trying to do this with sub $30 RAM, and it's still over budget. This is still over budget with sub $30 RAM. That's insane. Oh, 5500? Oh, you saved 10. Okay, okay. I like it. I like it. Good, nice find. This is actually cheaper. This is cheaper than the Zen 2. And it includes a box cooler. Okay, we'll go with that. There, you shaved off like $10. That's moving this in the right direction. I like that. That's good. That's Zen 3 also. So that's like over delivering. That's over delivering. 5500 is a cut down Cezanne. Okay, maybe it's still gonna be faster than Zen 2 though. You can save on the SSD if you're going with the 5500. Oh, you know what? That's another place where we can probably optimize this further. The SSD. The thing is, it has to be Gen 4. It has to match the read and write speed of the PlayStation 5 Pro, which means it has to be Gen 4. That immediately eliminates all the budget Gen 3s. And then it also needs to be 2 terabytes. It has to be 2 terabytes because the PS5 Pro comes with a 2 terabyte storage SSD. So no budget 1 terabyte. That's not allowed. So it's going to be a 2 terabyte, and it has to be similar read speeds. Somebody is saying this one. Wait, this one 660? Oh, okay, this one has a PS5 heatsink, but what's the speed on this? I don't know anything about this. Does anybody know what the specs are? It's not fast enough. It fails. It's too slow. It's too slow. This one's as fast as the P3 Plus. P3 Plus isn't fast enough. So it has to be 7,000. So basically, the only one that I know of. So obviously the Samsung 980 Pro, but see that's with heatsink. This one is 150. This is the same price as the Micro Center one that we had before. So this doesn't actually save any money. So no, that doesn't work. Like, it has to have a heatsink too. What about this? This has the heatsink. This heatsink looks like it might be too tall though. Did anyone check if that board will do Gen 4 on NVMe? Yes, it does. It has to, Shadow. Like, isn't it in... Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Yeah, no, it does. I'm pretty sure it does. You know why? Because it's... Oh, no, you're right. This is... No, it should still... No, oh... This is 2018? What? This is... I think you're right, Shadow. This is going to be Gen 3 only. This is an invalid entry. This is automatically going to fail the exam. Like, this is going to fail. It doesn't have Gen 4. You got to have Gen 4 on the board. We have to change it to a different board. Again. A different motherboard. Again. Okay, you guys are right. It's got to be B550. B550 has Gen 4. But guess what? It has that Wi-Fi. This has no Wi-Fi. No Wi-Fi. This has like, what is this? Why is there this huge empty space with nothing? This $100 MSI has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so you can pair the controller with it. I think this has it. This has Gen 4, doesn't it? I think, right? I think it does. MSI B550 M Pro VD. This is such a weird name. It just says M.2. Like, is it M.2 Gen 4? Come on, MSI. Like, why is your documentation so trash? Yeah, you're right. It says it right there. Yeah, it's like literally right there. Okay, good. Okay. But you know what? The problem with this... Oh, okay, that's still good. So we just have to put the... What do we need to put back? Wait, how are we all of a sudden under 700? Is something missing? Oh, the NVMe drive is missing. There's no NVMe drive. You're building a 2017 gaming PC to compare. It's not a 2017 gaming PC. The graphics card's not from 2017. But technically, okay, looking at all this would be like a 2021 computer. So this would be like a 3-year-old computer to compete with the PS5 Pro. Essentially, with what's here. This is 2021 technology. We need to find an M.2 now, and that's pretty much it. We need an M.2 for $50. We need to find a 2 terabyte SSD that is $50. That's a Western Digital hard drive. And it has to be Gen 4. What? 98? Man, even if we go under the spec, we still can't find the price point. Look at this. Look at this. This is the cheapest. Hey, this fails. There's no M.2. Wait, hold on a second. Does the MSI motherboard have an M.2 SSD? Oh yes. This has this has a heatsink. So this, even though this motherboard is double the price of the previous motherboard, we're paying double so that we can get Gen 4 and a heatsink. So now we can choose any SSD as long as it's above the spec. It has to be within Sony's spec. Now we don't need to buy an SSD that has a heatsink. Now we can choose any random SSD. It just has to have the right spec. So it has to be Gen 4. It has to have like 6,500 to 7,000 megabytes per second read speed, essentially. So it just has to be within that. But that helps. That does actually help. M.2, Gen 4, and then what, 1? Okay, let's see. So, I mean, the cheapest one is like $100. Change CPU again. 5500 is Gen 3. Oh. What? This doesn't support Gen 4? Are you serious? Hold on a second. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Time out. How is it that a Ryzen 5 3600 from 2019 supports Gen 4, but a Ryzen 5 5500 does not support Gen 4? What's going on? How is this a thing? Like, what?
The thing is, PS6 won't be getting any cheaper, so those who complain should just deal with reality.
So true. Just deal with reality. This not only is this a vibe check, this is a reality check. I don't think this is gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna work. Nice message there with the super chat, because I think this is a wake up call though, guys. Like, this is showing, like, see, the thing is, when Sony announced the $700 price point, yeah, and we're not even gonna get into the whole like EU pricing and how they're getting screwed over with the pricing, but the reality is, when you look at what you're getting. $700 full system, the Sony OS is included, like everything's there, Wi-Fi 7's there, 2 terabyte Gen 4, blah blah blah, everything's there, right? Like, trying to do that with computer parts is really, really hard to do, apparently. Apparently this is like really hard to do. Yeah, I mean, even, so here's the thing, because people kept saying, I saw so many people saying, well, why don't you just get Gen 4, the cheapest Gen 4 SSD? It's like, okay, yeah, even if we do that, guess what? It's still $100. So it's still over, it's still going to be like $50 over. 700 plus 80 for this, well, hold on, Nero, you don't need, see, here's the thing, that makes it easier for us. That makes it easier for us, because if Sony is not going to include a disk drive, we don't have, guess what? We don't have to include a disk drive. So that actually helps. That actually helps bring the price point down if trying to build the equivalent. $30 stand? No, that's not included. That's not included, so we don't have to price that in. Many people want disk drive on it, so we can count it in. Not if Sony's not selling it that way. You posted a Micro Center bundle that we could use. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so that, hold on, that's $300 though. So, yeah, but the thing is, if you add all of this up, like 80 plus 100 plus 28, that's still less than the Micro Center bundle, isn't it? That's $300. This is like, what, oh, hold on. Yeah, no, wait, I think you have a point there. Yeah, I think, no. This is still cheaper. This is still a lot cheaper. That's a much higher end bundle, but this is still cheaper though. I'm just looking at that bundle to see if that actually, if there's anything on there that will reduce the overall spend. Oh, the other thing too, Matt, that bundle that you linked does not include a CPU cooler. There's no CPU cooler in that bundle, or is there? Was there a CPU cooler? Oh, actually, there's no CPU cooler. The 7600X doesn't include one. So, yeah, no, this is still, I mean, this takes care of the CPU cooler piece too. So that's why I feel like this is as low as we can go. It's like, okay, let me just put a SSD in here. It has to be Gen 4. At this point, I'm just gonna go ahead and get the cheapest one. I don't. It just has to be 2 terabytes because they're selling a 2 terabyte SSD in theirs. So I don't care if it doesn't match their read speed. I just want to see like what does this look like. See, okay. So this is about as low as you can go. So 747. But keep in mind, technically, this SSD is probably not the right speed. Although, you know what? I want to see what this actually runs at. Because if this... I'll be amazed if this is close to what it needs to be. Okay, so this is up to 5,000. This isn't going to make it. Like, it's close, but it's not fast enough. But at this point, I think it's pretty clear you can't really match the value. You can't really match the value of... And remember, like, this right here, there's no keyboard, there's no mouse... There's no game controller. Like, there's still a bunch of stuff that's not here. Now, the Sony doesn't include a keyboard and a mouse, but it does include a game controller. So if it's a PC, I would at least include a keyboard and a mouse, like the cheapest one possible. No wireless stuff, no nothing like that, but still, it's, yeah. So this sort of is approximately close to what the console offers, except not really, because yes, the GPU has the same compute units. It's an older architecture. Its ray tracing is not as good. It consumes more electricity. So, you know, it's like, this is kind of, it's like a weak association. It's like just vaguely adjacent to what a PS5 Pro would offer, I would think, just by looking at this. So, wait, we need another CPU? Oh, this is only Gen 3? This is for real? This is only Gen 3? Jedi Master with the 199? Wow. Why would AMD make CPUs with Zen 3 architecture that don't have Gen 4 when they had Zen 2 CPUs that were Gen 4? What? This just confuses me. So that won't work. But see, you guys are making this be even more impossible to pull off. So I still kind of think, at this rate, you know what? I think this one, 3600, this one I know supports Gen 4, and it's $90. So at this point, we put that in there, and okay, that's, you know, 700. It's a little bit higher, but still, it's trending still close, but it's still over budget. But you see what I'm saying? Like, technically, this SSD needs to be faster. So that's going to be probably another, like, $40 to get that within spec. So 5600 is Gen 4. Yeah, but 5600 I think is more expensive. 5600. See, that's 114. So that's more money. But the reality is, because the PlayStation 5 Pro is Zen 2 based architecture for the CPU, this is actually more in line with what the actual PS5 Pro will offer from a CPU standpoint. So I think this is a more accurate approximation. I still kind of wish that the GPU... it's sad seeing, like, the fact that a 2020 GPU is still offering the best value to match a PS5 Pro. That's sad. Like, there's nothing better. The fact that you can't do, like, 7700 XT. The fact that this is not cheaper than a 6800, although, I mean, they're so close in performance, and the 7700 XT is probably faster in ray tracing. Like, I don't know. This, to me, is bizarre. Like, that's... Anyway, whatever. This one's got 16 gigs of VRAM, so whatever. Yeah, we didn't really give up any features. The only thing that's out of spec is the SSD. Yeah, you're saying Wi-Fi 7, but the reality is no Zen 2 and Zen 3 motherboards support Wi-Fi 7. So that's a compromise that you can't, like, There's no way around it, right? Because there's no motherboard that supports Wi-Fi 7 with this CPU. So that's basically it. No, we didn't give up RAM speed. This is fine. 3200 is kind of the upper bound. Like, you're not going to be doing much more beyond that with a 3600 anyway. So that's fine. This is actually a really good deal. I'm amazed that this is 3200 for under $30.
More to your build PlayStation Plus mem.
$60 more to the build. Well, I mean, that puts it where it needs to be. So you do that, and then that kind of does it. But keep in mind what we've had to compromise on. What, like, people are pointing out Wi-Fi 7. People are pointing out the fact that the SSD is not at the same speed as the PS5's SSD. And then the last thing is we're going with some El Cheapo $40 power supply special. So I personally don't really trust this power supply. I mean, I don't know. It's like $40 and it claims 600 watts. So you guys can see, like, there are some severe cost-cutting measures going on here. like if a program manager went and looked at this and was like, what's going on here? What is this? Like, there's like a $40 power supply and there's a $360 graphics card. But then you look at this and it's like the motherboard. Oh, okay, actually, you know what? The MSI motherboard actually has some heat sinks there on the VRM, so that's nice. But then this whole second part up here is uncovered. MSI ran out of budget. MSI only had enough budget to cover like part of the VRM. They left the rest of it exposed. Like, sorry, man, the price point's too low. Like, what? Asus isn't even gonna touch this price point, man. Are you serious? Like, can you imagine? Like, okay, look, guys, hold on, time out. Look at this. Look at this. $757. The Asus Crosshair Hero by itself is like $700. Just the one Asus motherboard is like $700. So when you look at it that way, considering how much high-end graphics cards cost, considering how much Asus likes to charge for their motherboards these days, the PS5 Pro is actually, I hate to say this, but I think I'm starting to see the light. I'm starting to see the light now. I think this thing is amazing value.
The Wi-Fi on that motherboard is slower than the Wi-Fi available on the standard PS5, let alone the PS5 Pro.
Yeah, I know. But the problem is we can't really do anything about it because we're stuck on like Zen 2 and Zen 3. And Zen 2 and Zen 3 don't have the option for Wi-Fi 7. I mean, they don't even have the option for Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 6E. Maybe some of the later ones have Wi-Fi 6, but I mean, that's going to turn this into a $1,000 console, guys. But you know what? It's funny because down here at the bottom, it says vertical stand sold separately. Here, I'll include a vertical stand. I'll include a vertical stand for this PC, complete with a PlayStation logo. It's here. It's ready. You know, like it's ready to go. We got the vertical stand. So even though it says vertical stand sold separately, we're gonna throw in the vertical stand and include that anyway with this PC. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Like that's it. I mean, it's starting to look like it's actually good value. You have to add the price. Add $80 for the eventual GTA 6 copy. When you add $86, you've already eaten into that. Like this is already like eating 60 out of that. So, if a person buys a Pro, they should get a stand. Yeah, I know, right? Like $2,000. What? Why would it be 2,000? In what context is 2,000? So what I am starting to conclude here is it's actually not that expensive in the grand scheme of things. And this dude who wrote this article, the analyst, let's just read what this guy wrote, because this guy, I don't know if this guy's AI or if this is a real person, but let's just read what he wrote. The price point was in line with what I expected, as the PS5 Pro is a premium product for highly engaged fans. But $700 is the ceiling for what Sony is offering here. It's a sweet spot that highly engaged players would be receptive to. Reddit would disagree, and I think Twitter would disagree with that, but these players have shown time and time again that they're willing to pay an extra $200. I don't know where that 200, okay, because this is in the lens of the fact that the base model is $500 and now this Pro is $200 more. So $200 to complement their experience, say with a high-end controller or... Oh, okay, never mind. I took that out of context. That's not what he was talking about. He was referring to the PlayStation Portal, which is $200. And I think, isn't there like a high-end PS5 controller that's also $200? I forget what it's called. It's like the PS... What is the special controller called? Because didn't Xbox also do that? Xbox has the Elite controller. Didn't Sony also make some kind of Elite PlayStation Premium controller or something? And that's like $200. DualSense Edge. Yeah, DualSense Edge. So, okay, that's two. So, wait a minute. So, the DualSense Edge is $200? $200 for a game controller. So, think about that. Somebody could buy the base PlayStation 5, and then they can buy the DualSense Edge for $200 more. So, then they would spend $700 and they would get a PlayStation 5. Would they get this though? Would they get a vertical stand with the way the PlayStation 5 is now? I don't know if the Slim includes the vertical stand. So they would get the PlayStation 5, they would get the disc drive, they would get a controller in the box with the PS5 Slim, and then they would buy a DualSense, so they would have a $200 flagship controller. So Slim does not include the stand. Okay, so yeah, the vertical stand. Vertical stands sold separately. Vertical stands are sold separately. That's the one thing that I will never forget from the PS5 Pro announcement, is that vertical stands are sold separately. DualSense Edge is powerful as PS4 to be that... Yes, Marcel. The ASICs and the vibration controls in the DualSense Edge are so high-end, they have enough processing power that they can rival a base PlayStation 4 from 2013. You don't really need a stand. Hot swappable sticks. Oh, on the DualSense. We can look at the part list later once we're done. We're wrapping this up, but but look what this analyst says. Anything higher than $700 would obviously have resulted in even more backlash. If PlayStation and Xbox could turn back... This paragraph is very interesting. This is a very interesting paragraph. If PlayStation and Xbox could turn back the clock, they'd probably have priced their base consoles at $600 at launch. Just look at Xbox's $600 2TB Galaxy Black Edition. While that console has a Blu-ray drive, besides more storage, it essentially has the same specs as the launch Series X. A $100 more PS5 Pro without a disk drive does not seem outrageously priced next to the Galaxy Black Series X. So does that make sense? I haven't really kept up with the different Xbox SKUs. Like, I don't know how many different Series X. Like, is there a slim? Is there a diskless one? You know, the only Series X that I'm familiar with is the original launch model that came with the disk drive. And it was basically a tall rectangle. That's all I remember about it. And it had like the chimney style cooling where it exhausts the heat just straight up out the top. Series XXX with 69 CUs. That's the latest one, right? Yep, console gamers can get stable 60. Yeah, that remains to be seen. We'll see. I mean, that's what Mark Cerny's sort of hinting at, though. This is highly dependent on supply, of course, and how well new games implement the new features. If there are enough PS5 Pros to go around, I could see them selling in line with the PS4 Pro when all is said and done. Depending on how long the current generation lasts, I wouldn't be surprised to see 13 to 15 million Pros sold by the end of the generation. So this analyst, the market analyst, I guess I forget where he's from, but he was from some market research firm, and he basically thinks that the PS5 Pro will be just as successful as the PS4 Pro was. And I kind of agree with him, you know, like, especially considering this console could very well be the last of its kind. At this point, I think it's pretty clear Microsoft is probably not going to do another console. They might do one, but there's a good chance that they don't do one, which means the Series X could be the last Xbox console. And then Sony, they're in a weird spot. I think they're in a weirder spot than Microsoft from a longevity standpoint. I think Sony is probably like a more powerful brand in the gaming market compared to Xbox, especially globally. However, long term, if you look at the long picture, like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, where do you guys think Microsoft will be? Well, where will the Xbox brand be in 10 years? Where will the PlayStation brand be in 10 years? So if there's going to be a PS6, it would launch around 4 years from now, maybe about 4 years from now, I would say. So like 2028 would be a good time to launch PS6, I would say. Which means PS5 Pro has like a 4-year lifespan in terms of it being the flagship, most powerful gaming console on the market. Sony sells PS5 Pro at a loss since they make all the money in subscriptions and games. They could be doing that, but I don't know. I kind of think they are turning a profit now, although it's a small one for these consoles. PlayStation won't exist in 12 years. Well, typically they do 10-year life cycle console generations, starting with PS2. Although PS1 almost did 10 years. You look at the PS3. PS3 was basically, well, PS3 was really long. Well, yeah, PS3 was very long, actually. It was like late 2006. If you add 10 years, that would put it up to 2016. They introduced PS4 in the fall of 2013, which means what Sony does is they launch a new console generation at about the 7-year mark. 6 to 7 years in, they launch the new console. So when the PS5 hits about 6 to 7 years old, that's when you can expect the next console. So, okay, well, if we look at it that way, then 2027 is when the PS6 should come out, which would be like 3 years from now, actually. So almost 3 years. We'll see. So, Yeah, but typically they have like a 10-year life cycle, which means developers are incentivized to make games for a console within that 10-year span. So, and that's the reason why some people who are not aware of this have always thought that the older consoles are holding back gaming innovation, when the reality is it's just because the console's still another way for them to make money and sell copies of their game. Like a third party person, like a third party developer, if the PS4 is still supported, it's still on the market, people can still buy them brand new, then that's another revenue opportunity if you want to develop the game to support and exist on that older platform. So, and that's the main reason. But once the manufacturer, in this case Sony, pulls the plug on that generation, as they have done with PS4 at this point, there's no incentive to keep making games for that console. And that's how a console generation actually dies and actually ends, and the hardware gets retired. So Sony's $700 PS5 Pro is for super fans. It won't really grow the player base still, and I can see that. See, I think most of the people that were complaining about the price of the PS5 Pro, it goes back to the super chat from Super Googly earlier, about the people need to come to terms with reality. The comment was, the thing is PS6 won't be getting any cheaper, so those who complain should deal with the reality. Yeah, that's actually a pretty solid comment when you think about it, because look at how graphics cards have gotten more expensive over the years, especially at the upper high end of things, right? Not like people will complain about a $700 PS5 Pro, yet they'll go out and buy an RTX 4090 the next day. So, come on. That's weird. On the flip side, you have people who complain about everything being too expensive. So they'll just complain about whatever it is being too expensive. But the reality is they were never going to buy that thing in the first place. So, like this guy is saying, it won't really grow the PlayStation's player base. I agree with that. I think this console is going to be a console that it's kind of like the newest iPhone, like the new flagship Apple product. They're trying to market it that way. They're trying to show it off as like, oh, you get the best experience. It's about the experience. It's about the immersiveness of playing the game. That's what they're going for with this concept of what it means to be the PS5 Pro. That's what they're doing. So that's why it has access to the PSSR. That's why it has the fastest GPU compared to the old one. They're doubling up on the storage to make it seem like you're getting the more premium treatment, because it's like all the peasants with the base PS5, they get like 1 terabyte of storage, but if you're getting the Pro, it's like you're flying first class. It's like you're getting 2 terabytes of storage. You're getting twice as much as everybody else. You paid for the premium priority line at the airport. So you bypass all those normies that are waiting in line to go through the TSA security. You just go right through the priority line, and you don't even have to get x-rayed. You just walk through the metal detector. You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, everybody else, all the peasants, they get the x-ray, they get the full body scan, whereas like the people with the PS5 Pro, no, they're VIP. They paid $700. They get to bypass all that nonsense and just go straight through. So that's kind of what they're doing here. Now, that's not going to grow their player base, because most of the gamers, they go for the lowest cost initially, and they'll just pay in later on with subscriptions or whatever. Like that. That's why Game Pass is so successful. That's why the base unit is so successful, and it'll continue to be successful. Like even the digital version. And the other thing too is the people complaining about the lack of a disk drive. Well, last I checked, when Mark Cerny did the presentation or something, or like someone in one of the interviews was saying that the disc copies of the games are like less than, it's like 20% or less of the total sales of any PS5 game is physical disc. The remaining 80 to 90% of the game sales are digital sales. So, and on top of that, if you guys remember when the PS5 first came out, when it first launched, the digital version, the $400 digital version, was gone so fast that like you never had a chance to get one. And then the disc one for $500, that one was getting scalped like everywhere as well. But at least you had a chance if you worked hard enough and you were diligent to keep trying all these different retailers' websites. Eventually, you'd be able to get a disc version of the PS5, although you had to put in a lot of effort. Whereas with the digital one, I was like, man, the digital PS5 was like a unicorn. Like, that thing was so rare, like, back in the day, like, back in 2021, like, nobody even knew what a digital PS5 looked like. It was so rare. It's like one of those things where it's like, you know how there was a solar eclipse? You know how there was a total solar eclipse earlier this year that traveled over part of the United States? Like, it's like that. Trying to see a digital PS5 in 2020 and 2021 was like waiting your entire life to see a total solar eclipse. Like, that's how rare it was. So all these people talking about, oh, it doesn't have a disk drive. Well, last I checked, everybody wanted the digital one. So they went digital, and then now everyone's complaining. So it's like, what? You know what I'm saying? I can't help it. When people were complaining about, oh, hey, there's no disk drive, you got to pay $80 for a disk drive add-on, or like what? So I think Sony can address that, though. I think what they can do, like probably 6 months after the initial launch of the Pro, they can probably they can create like a new PS5 Pro SKU that includes the disk drive. Just like how on the Slim, you have the option for the digital Slim or you have the disc Slim. So I think at some point, what Sony will probably do, they'll sell like a $749.99. So basically, it'll be like a nice bundle, right? Where they bundle the disk drive with the Pro, and they're selling that bundle for essentially $30 off. You're saving $30 on the disk drive. I feel like they could totally do that. For $749, you get the full PS5 Pro with the disk drive. I think that's within the realm of possibility. I can totally see Sony doing that. You got your PS5 from scalpers day one. I think a lot of people ended up doing that though, because see, those things were constantly sold out, like everywhere, globally, for a long time. And we're not. And when I say a long time, I'm not talking 6 months. I'm talking like almost 2 years. It was like for almost 24 months. It was a challenge to buy the PlayStation 5. The original model. Not the Slim, because the Slim came out last year. But, because I know a lot of people that were trying to get a PS5, but they refused to pay scalpers, and they missed their chance at launch because either they weren't fast enough, or they weren't paying attention, or they weren't diligent enough to try all the different websites that were selling the PS5. Like legit, I'm not talking about scalpers, I'm not talking about eBay, I'm talking about Best Buy. Well, if you're in the US, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, Newegg, GameStop, like all the retailers. And then all the lesser known ones. And that's how I actually got mine. I got mine on launch day because I got lucky, because I just so happened to be watching Jake Randall's live stream, and someone in his chat was like, hey guys, Ant Online has them, and I was like, Ant Online, what? What's Ant Online? That sounds is that real or is that some fake scam site? I go to Ant Online, sure enough, it's like a legitimate company, and they're like selling them at the actual retail price, and they're in stock, and you can add to cart, and you can check out. And I was like, wait, it was that easy to buy a PS5 on launch day? It was like a surreal experience after staying up for like 12 plus hours trying to buy one from Best Buy, GameStop, Target, Walmart, Newegg, like all of them. And yeah, so I'm proud of my launch PS5. Like that, I will not trade that in. I am not selling my launch PS5 even after the Pro comes out. Besides, because I have a tech channel like this, if I get the Pro, I'll be able to do comparison videos, right? Like, this is how it looks on PS5. This is how it looks on PS5 Pro. This is the fidelity mode on PS5. This is the performance mode on PS5. Because I really want to go back and play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the Pro. Like, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I am going to go back and platinum trophy that game using the PS5 Pro. And I will probably also go back and play Final Fantasy 16 on Final Fantasy difficulty level on the PS5 Pro in whatever the boost performance mode is. So I already have plans. I'm also going to try Lords of the Fallen, which is a UE5 game that was insanely hard to run on PS5. So I really want to see how the PS5 Pro handles Lords of the Fallen, because Lords of the Fallen was probably my favorite game that I had the most fun playing last year. So Sony likes customers like him double dipping. Yeah, I would say, like, so going back to this article, right? Like, I don't consider myself a super fan of Sony, because when I look at my game library, most of my games that I play are on PC now. But I'm the type of person, I'm not going to wait, like, 18 months to play Final Fantasy 16 on PC. Like, I'll use Final Fantasy 16 as an example, because Final Fantasy 16 was a PS5 exclusive that came out in June of last year. And it's coming to PC next week. So I'm the type of person, I'm not going to wait a whole like year and a half to play a game if I really want to play that game. So no, I'm going to play it on PlayStation if that's the only way to play it at that time. So the same thing's going to happen for games like Grand Theft Auto 6. Am I going to wait around for like 2 years or whatever to play GTA 6 on PC? Probably not. No. So same deal with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth came out on PS5 in February of this year. And I already got to play it. I'm like, okay. But see, that is a great game that can benefit from that pro treatment. So, you'll try to buy 2 pros and flip them on eBay. Then use the profits to upgrade the PC. See, good luck with that. Because, see, I don't think this is going to be... See, I don't expect this price point to be that attractive to the average person who's looking to get one. Because the reason why the PS5 was so profitable, because like for scalpers, was because it was short supply and it was at a price point that was more reasonable. People could actually afford it. Here, now you're starting to get into that realm of, it's kind of too expensive. See, so that's where, I don't know, I think it's kind of risky to do that, because when it's priced higher, it's going to be harder to justify, and the demand won't be as strong. So, especially after the initial wave. Lenovo has $800 laptops that are decent enough. If you can afford $780 for a Pro with disk drive, you can afford an $800 laptop. if you build a PC, if you build out a PC, what is that in context to? Did you price any software for a PC? What do you mean, like the games? You forgot to add Windows. No, we're not going to do that. The reason why I said that earlier is because, yeah, that came up about the operating system. No, because the thing is, you can install Linux for free, and you can basically run like a Steam gaming box with this. So that's the one benefit of the doubt I will give in favor to trying to do this with the PC hardware. Yeah, it's like you kind of do need to have some kind of software, but the fact that you can get Linux for free, you can do that. So that's the reason why I did not include the OS. But even without the OS, it's still technically outside the price range. And on top of that, we're also sort of out of spec because we don't have the right Wi-Fi version. We don't have an SSD that is exactly the same speed as the PS5's SSD. This one's actually a little bit slower. So, and it's still like outside the price point. So it's still too hard to pull off. So, yeah, I mean, we got close. I would say this is close. This supports Gen 4. This has Wi-Fi. It doesn't have the correct Wi-Fi, but it does have Wi-Fi. This is the same RAM amount. This is a Gen 4 SSD. It's not the correct speed, but it's the correct generation. This GPU has similar raster performance to the PS5 Pro, but the ray tracing performance is weaker. So you can see, like, it's sort of there, but then at the same time, it's not meeting the full requirements. So it's weird. You know, it's like, what this proves, though, is that $700 for the PS5 Pro is actually acceptable, considering what you're getting and considering what you would have to go through to try to, like, get as close to that price point as possible. We're talking like skimping on the power supply. We have like the cheapest case. I don't even know if this case is good. I just put it in here because it was the cheapest one. You know, this is the cheapest graphics card that meets the raster performance. Like anything else will be more expensive. So it's, yeah, this is it. This is the most approximate we could get, and it's still more expensive. And it has no software. So, and it doesn't have a game controller. It doesn't even have a keyboard and a mouse. So it's like, technically it's kind of a bust. It's kind of a fail in my mind. This whole exercise is a complete fail, but this is as close as we could get without this thing starting to go way over like $900. Because I would figure if we were to correct this to make it like, and add a game controller or a keyboard and a mouse, like this thing's gonna get close to like 900 plus at that point. So yeah, I see it. Yeah, I see the light. The $700 thing is actually okay. So including the fact that vertical stand, although that vertical stand sold separately, is that stings. That really stings. So that's probably the one thing that I'll never forget about this whole launch. Like, if we look back, when I look back on console launches 5 years from now, the one thing I'll remember about the PS5 Pro, I'll forget about like Wi-Fi 7 and the 2 terabyte SSD. The thing that I'll remember, because Sony was so eloquent in mentioning it in their marketing, is the vertical stand is sold separately. That's what I'll never forget. So yeah, that's basically it. It's like, are you interested in buying a PS5 Pro? I like how they have a little poll here. Are you interested in buying a PS5 Pro? Yes, even at $700. No, not even at a discount. Maybe if they ever lower the price. So in my case, yes, because I plan on getting one. So I'm going to say yes. And I'm in the minority at 18% of the vote. And it looks like most people, no, not even at a discount. So see, what this proves is that if people are trying to flip these, they're going to have a hard time. Because the majority of people are not even going to buy one. And the other thing that you got to keep in mind is the majority of people that are even remotely like interested in the PlayStation ecosystem, they most likely they already have a PlayStation 5, and it's going to be on Sony to prove to them that the upgrade in graphics fidelity and the overall user experience is worth them upgrading to the Pro. So, yeah, this makes sense to me. Like, I expected it to mostly be no. Well, I'm surprised that no, not even at a discount, is higher than maybe if they ever lower the price. Because I would feel like this one in the middle should have the most votes, because I feel like this basically says in the future, if the Pro gets discounted by like $100 to like $600, I think that would open the door for a lot more people to consider one. But most people either already have a PS5 and they don't care. Others were never going to buy into the console market in the first place, so it doesn't even apply to them. It's not even relevant at this point. So that's why this poll is the way it is. Did you know that the disk drive is already sold out? Yeah, I heard there was a run on the disk drive. 45% faster than 6700 is faster than 4060 Ti. Yeah, I know. We were never even talking about 3060 Ti. Where did the 3060 Ti come up? Like, that has nothing to do with the PS5 Pro. Remember, the ROG Ally is $800. Yeah, that's the other thing too, super googly. Like, this is the thing that is kind of confusing to me. When people are complaining about the price of the PS5 Pro, yet they're not complaining about the ROG Ally. They're not complaining about a 4070 Ti Super. Those things are all essentially more expensive than the PS5 Pro. The disk drive, how much is it? I think somebody said earlier, I think it's like $80. So I'm not sure. Someone in the chat said the price of the disk drive earlier. See, in my case, the disk drive doesn't really matter to me, because when I look at my PS5 game collection, I only have like 3 disc games. So I've got Demon Souls, I have Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I have some Call of Duty game that I don't even remember what version of Call of Duty it was. And the only reason why I have those is because I bought a bundle. So when I bought my PS5, I bought it through Ant Online, and Ant Online was selling it as a bundle. So the bundle came with an extra controller. So that's actually why I have 2, because the bundle, there was one with the PS5, and there was another one in a separate box. So that's why I have 2 PlayStation 5 controllers, because I bought the bundle on launch day from Ant Online. But in addition to that, it came with 3 disc games. It came with Demon Souls, Miles Morales, and some version of Call of Duty that I can't even remember what Call of Duty. It was COD something. Cold War? Yeah, I guess. And the funny thing about all 3 of those disc games, they are still sealed in their original shrink wrap packaging. I have not opened any of those disc games at all since launch day of the PS5 back in 2020. No, it was November 8th, 2020. So I still have 3 sealed. I have a sealed copy of Demon Souls Remake, a sealed copy of Spider-Man Miles Morales, and a sealed copy of, I guess it's COD Cold War. I've never, so get this. I have a disc version PS5 launch model, and not once have I ever used the disc drive. So I'm just saying, Sony has enough market research to look at how many of the gamers are actually utilizing the disk drive. The disk drive is like, it's, like it's there. I mean, I don't actually use mine. So that's why I'm okay with the fact that this doesn't include the disk drive. Now, would it have been nice if it had a disk drive? Yes, absolutely. I'm the type of person who always says it's better to have something and not need to use it than to not have something when you actually need it. So, yeah, it would have been nice if it had a disk drive. But would I actually use a disk drive, considering how I've used my PS5 for the last almost 4 years now? No, I don't need the disk drive. So I'm not too concerned about the fact that it has no disk drive. That's because I have the digital version of Demon's Souls. See, here's the thing. I bought the digital version of Demon's Souls on PlayStation's store before meaning I pre-ordered Demon's Souls digital edition on Sony's store. Then, because see, here's my original plan. My original plan was, I'm gonna just purchase the model, like the $500 PS5, with no games. Now, obviously, every PS5 at launch came with a copy of Astrobot? Astro's Playroom. Yeah. Astro's Playroom comes with every PlayStation 5. So I figured, okay, I'll have Astro's Playroom for free because that comes with the console, and I'll just have Demon's Souls with the console, like the digital version of Demon's Souls. Now, because I had to go to Ant Online and buy their bundle, I didn't care what the games were in the bundle. I just wanted the console. It just so happened that the bundle came with a physical copy of Demon's Souls, but I was never going to need to use the physical copy. So now I'm glad that I have the physical copy, because now it's like, I have another copy of Demon's Souls as a physical edition to add to my collection, because I am somebody who used to collect a lot of physical games, especially in the PS3 era, and then into the PS4 era, and then it just kind of died off. I slowly transitioned into digital gaming throughout the PS4 era. So yeah, that's the reason why it's like, yeah, it's unopened, but I've already put like 90 hours into Demon's Souls on the PS5. Going to PC will do that to you. What will do that? Game on something more akin to a Switch or Steam Deck? Can't believe you didn't open Demon's Souls. Oh yeah, me transitioning over to digital. Yeah, I think that's what you meant. Yeah, gaming on PC will do that. Yeah, because who uses physical games on PC? Nobody. See? So that's why it's like, I do like the idea behind digital preservation. Like if the servers are shut down and you can no longer buy a game, and we're already seeing this with the PS3. Like with PS3 games, for example, with the PlayStation Store shutting down for PS3, you won't be able to buy PS3 games on PSN anymore. Like, what does that mean, right? For that entire ecosystem. That means, like, if you don't have the disc and you never bought the digital version of the game, so, yeah. So I've got the PS3 over there, and I have the PS5 right next to it. The console that I retired was actually the PS4, because if you have a PS3 60 gigabyte, like I have over here, and you have a PS5, the PS3 can play PS1, PS2, and PS3. The PS5 can play PS4 and PS5. So with those two consoles, you can play all of the games, like from PS1 era all the way to PS5. So those are the only two consoles. Now, the thing about PS3, like the original fat PS3, 60 gigabyte, that could play PS2 games with hardware support, you don't ever want that thing to die, because those things will yellow light of death at some point. And I try not to use mine too much because it's so old now. But yeah, vanilla PS3 is the only console that plays SAC. Yeah, we've got one. I've got one right over here. It's plugged in. I don't really want to unplug it, but it's over there. Actually, let me see. Yeah, this is it. Here it is. The piano black PS3, complete with the memory card readers, the chrome grille. This is the original 60 gigabyte. The good old 60 gigabyte launch model. PS3 fat. But some discs don't have the full. There's different ones. This one right here is the original 60 gigabyte. So this one has the full emotion engine and the graphic synthesizer in it. But see, that PS3, so this one that I had, man, this thing is heavy. This PS3 can play PS1, PS2, and PS3. So this takes care of my PS1 through PS3 library. Then my PS5, the PS5 supports PS4 and PS5. So I basically got my entire PlayStation library accounted for with just two consoles. And on top of that, PS3 upscales PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games. PS1 had a great CD player. Oh yeah, it did. Well, so I didn't have the original PlayStation. I had the PS1. So if we go, yeah, so the original, hold on. Where's the PlayStation? This PlayStation console. Here we go. Yeah, see, okay. I never had this. I had this. In fact, I still have this somewhere. Somewhere in storage, I still have my old PS1. So I've got one of these. I do not have this, though. Like, this is the original PlayStation. So, but I've got one of these. I remember when I first got this, I think I stayed up like all night to play Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX on the PS1. Those were the days. PS1. And then for PlayStation 2, you got the original PlayStation on release day? Yeah, I got the, where's the... Okay, so for PlayStation 2, I actually have the original PlayStation 2. What I don't have, and I've always been kind of, like, bummed about it, I don't have the actual vertical stand. I don't have the official vertical stand for my PS2. I have like a third party, it looks kind of like this stand, but it's not the same. But yeah, I've got the original PlayStation 2. So I've got this. I never got to play Final Fantasy 11 though. I know I had a lot of friends that they had the they bought the modem and the expansion bay adapter to add the hard drive and the modem so they could play Final Fantasy 11 on the PS2. Yeah, so I had that one. Never had the Slim. So it's weird. It's like I had the PS1, like the small PS1, but then I had like the big PS2. And then for PlayStation 3, as I just showed you guys, so PlayStation 3, I have the original. So I've got this one. I mean, that's literally the one that's right next to me. But I also have this one. Because my original PlayStation 3 died. I think I've told this story before in a different live stream. My PS3 FAT, the original 60 gigabyte, died. It ran into yellow light of death in 2014, and I tried to use a heat gun. I tried to put it in the oven to do the like resolder all the balls on the actual, I guess, the cell or whatever, and it never came back. It was just straight up dead. So, yes, it did. It's the original one. It's the original one. 60 gigabyte PS3. Chrome disc door. Yes. It died. And then I got this. Well, hold on. Did I get that immediately? I think I either got this one, but I eventually, at some point, I went to GameStop and I bought a refurbished PS3 60 gigabyte. This is the one with the chrome shiny disc tray with the card readers, compact flash. What's on here? We got 4 USB 2.0. We have a hard drive LED. There's a Wi-Fi LED. There's the compact flash. There's SD and mini SD. And there's memory and memory stick Pro Duo. Right in there. You guys can see it right there. There you go. With the 4 USB. So this is it. This is the real deal. This is the original 60 gigabyte launch. Unfortunately, my original one died to the yellow light of death. This one I purchased used from GameStop. I want to say I purchased this in like 2014. It's like I've had this for like 10 years. 10 years. This one thankfully has never died. But the first one did die. So yeah, I've experienced the whole yellow light of death. I know what it's like. Yeah, it's sad because that was the original one. Because I bought this one secondhand from GameStop 10 years ago now. I also have this one though. This one is the living room console. Like this one is used for like home theater, like Blu-ray, movies, that kind of stuff. But, you know, this one, I have this one as well. But that's basically all I've got. So I've got the original fat, and I've got the slim. I don't have what I call the ghetto slim. This one's like the really ghetto slim. This is the last PS3 that came out. Like, this is the most cost-reduced version. It's missing all the LEDs. It doesn't have the slot disc loader. It has, like, this little door that, like, or this cover that, like, slides open. Yeah, no, this one, man, this one feels cheap. This one feels cheap. It's like a little toy. This one was the last one that was decent in terms of the PS3's look and feel. So I've got one of these, and then I have my original. Your first console was the Sega Master? SG-1000. You know, I always wanted a Sega Saturn. I always wanted a Sega Saturn or an N64. But see, all the older, like the mobile, like the handhelds and the older consoles, that was all before my time. The older PlayStations were good Blu-ray. Yeah, man, like they're good. These are excellent because this one is dead silent. It makes no noise. It is so quiet. This is my favorite Slim. Well, like with the PS2, I basically promised to do like all the yard work, anything that was like outside, like plant flowers, mow the grass, cut like tree branches down because there's too many of them, etc. I basically promised that I would like do all of that for the next like 2 years or whatever, to convince my parents that I needed a PS2. And then I also had to save up like $100. I had to save $100 to put toward the PS2, but then my parents, they were like, okay, yeah, if you're gonna do all the yard work, you're gonna do all the other stuff. Yeah, I basically chauffeured my dad around for like a year. No. I couldn't drive back then, but you know, like that's history. But yeah, that's how I got my PS2. Like way back. That's way back in the day. That's a funny story though. I could totally imagine myself doing that for a PS2 though. That's sad. But yeah, for PS4, this is where I really started embracing the PC gaming experience. So I guess I had always gamed on PC, like as far back as the late 90s, early 2000s, although I never actually had my own gaming PC until around like 2006, 2007. That was when I finally built my first PC, like by myself, with no help, with nobody showing me what to do. Prior to that, I used like hand-me-down family computers that were really not good. Like you couldn't really game on them. But the PlayStation 4 was when I made the transition to like fully embrace the PC gaming experience. You know, that was when I started really looking at upgrading to CPUs and GPUs that were not like the cheapest CPU that I could get, or the best GPU, dollar per frame, price per gig, price per wattage, perf per watt, whatever you want to call those metrics, those value metrics, as they say. I stopped looking at it from that lens and started focusing more on performance. It was during the PS4 era is when that happened. I got sick of 30 frames per maybe. I don't. The thing is, 30 FPS wasn't really a thing until 30 frames per second became a thing definitely in the PS3 generation. But there were still a number of games that could do 30 frames per second. Like fighting games like Tekken, Street Fighter, those games were always like 60. But yeah, like I'm trying to think of what games were like 30 frames per second. On the PS3, I know there were games that were 30. RPGs, I guess. Like Final Fantasy 13 was a 30 frames per second game, and that was on PS3. The Persona games were 30 frames per second. So yeah, I guess single player RPGs were 30 frames per second. But for some reason back then, on the older consoles, I guess it was because the resolution wasn't being driven so hard, the frame times were okay for 30 frames per second. So even though it was 30 frames per second, it was very smooth. Although, you know, then we got games like Dark Souls 1, and everybody who played Dark Souls 1 on a PS3 remembers Blighttown and what that was like. But yeah, so I have this PS4. So I've got this PS4, like the actual, what do you call it? The launch model. I did not buy a PlayStation 4 at launch. I got mine in 2015. So this launched at the end of 2013. I got mine in early 2015 for a game called Bloodborne. Bloodborne literally compelled me to buy a PlayStation 4. So that's why I got one. And then I guess I have like a few, I gotta go back and look, but my PlayStation 4 library is nothing compared to my PlayStation 3 library and my PlayStation 2 library. So for me, I would say overall, my console, like my days as a console gamer, it was really PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. It was those two console generations. That was where most of my game collection was on console. And then during the PS4 era, I transitioned over to PC. People want that game to... Yeah, I know. That is a game that needs a remake. Do you know that game will be 10 years old next year? That is crazy to think that Bloodborne will be 10 years old in March. Wow. That game still looks really good. But yeah, I got this, and then I did get the Pro, and I forget when I got the Pro, because I didn't get the Pro when it was new either. I got it around... When did I get that thing? I think I got it in like 2017 or something to play... What did I even get that for? Oh, it was for the same reason. So basically, the only reason why I got the Pro was because of what Sony was telling people. Like, it improved the gaming experience. It had better frame rates. It had higher resolutions. It had better graphics settings than the base model. That's the only reason why I got the Pro. And that's honestly, guys, it's the same story with the upcoming PS5 Pro. That's the only reason I'm going to get a PS5 Pro. Because it's going to make the games look better and they're going to play better. That's it. That's all it needs to do. That's all it needs to do. Were you a big... No, I never played Destiny. I played like a little bit of Destiny 2, but I never played Destiny. No. I'm trying to think, like, what were the games that I actually played on the PS4? I know I played Bloodborne. I played Dark Souls 3. I played Dark Souls 3 on PC as well. Although when Dark Souls 3 first came out, there was a lot of hackers. There was a lot of people, like, using map hacks and stuff. So, like, in PvP on PC for Dark Souls 3 was, like, completely broken because of cheaters. So, and that's one of the reasons why I preferred playing it on PlayStation, because you didn't have to deal with people cheating in multiplayer on console. And I figured, hey, if I'm going to be playing the game using a controller anyway, might as well just play it on the console. And the PS4 Pro, it performed well. Like, it improved the experience for games like Final Fantasy 15, Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 2. I mean, even Dark Souls 1... Well, actually, no. Dark Souls 1 was PS3. But I think Dark Souls 1 got... If I'm not mistaken, Dark Souls 1 got a remaster. It got like a remastered edition for PS4. And yeah, I think I played it on that. And it was much better on PS4 than it was on PS3. No more 15 frames per second Blighttown. Destiny 2 is a sunk cost. Is for sunk cost adding. Dropped PS Plus as well. Yeah, I never had PlayStation Plus until recently, actually. Because, I mean, I didn't really play a whole lot of online. And the thing, a lot of people don't know this. Like, it depends on the game. Some games you can still play online without having the PlayStation subscription. It depends on the game. Because if, like, for example, I can give you a good example. If you play Final Fantasy 14 on the PlayStation 5, you can play the game and connect to Square Enix's servers without having a PlayStation subscription. Another game would be like Genshin Impact or Honkai Star Rail is a single player game. But like but it has multiplayer things. Like it has like social media. You can have like friends lists and stuff. But Genshin Impact is a game that you can play with friends on console. In fact, it's cross play, and you don't even need PlayStation Network. Like you don't need the Sony subscription. So free to play is allowed outside of PS Plus. See, it's weird because I wonder if it has to do with the way the server infrastructure is set up for PlayStation. I'm guessing if the developer has their own server infrastructure and you just need an internet connection to connect to their server, you don't need PlayStation Plus to do that. But if Sony is subsidizing or housing the server infrastructure for the multiplayer aspect of a game to some capacity, then you have to go through the Sony subscription. I think that's how it works. Yeah, it depends. It all depends on like how they do their contract. But anyway, we spent like 2 hours talking about PlayStation. We failed to build a $700 gaming PC that could be a direct comparison to the PlayStation 5 Pro. Yeah. So, but whatever. In other news, I guess we're going to change topics now since we're talking about PC. So, RTX 5080. Let's see, what is the hold on, let's see, RTX 5080. Let's see what's the latest rumor. This is the most recent one. So now we're going to focus on PC for a little bit here. RTX 5090 and 5080 rumored for completion this month. 550 watt and 350 watt TGP. So they're coming out soon. These are going to be the fastest and the second fastest graphics card on the market for sure. The 5090 will be completely uncontested, and the 5080 will slot in right between the 5090 and the 4090. So these will be the fastest GPU and the second fastest GPU. And these will be the only two new GPUs that launch from NVIDIA this year. Everything else will come out next year. Will there be a new connector? I don't know. This to me sounds fake though. I can't see the 5090 being 550 watts. I'm thinking the RTX 5090 will be 450 watt TDP. And the 5080, I can see it being 350, but I really think it's going to be more like 300 watts or 320 watts. So I don't see this being 350. This is going to be 450. I don't see this being 550 because the problem with making it 550, a lot of people don't know this unless they watch the video that I did several months ago about the power connector. So the only way that the RTX 5090 or any GPU that has the special 12-volt high-power connector, the only way it can pull more than 450 watts is if the power supply is ATX 3.0, and meaning it has the cable, and has to be 1100 watts or more. Meaning, if you connect a 5090 to a 850 watt power supply, it will never pull over 450 watts, assuming it is connected to a proper connector. It's not using like a, like a breakout or something. Well, even if it uses the dual whatever type 3, like on Corsair, for example, because the sense wires are wired in the way they are, it still needs to be an 1100 watt power supply or better for the cable to pull up to 600 watts. Otherwise, the graphics card will automatically, in its VBIOS, it will not exceed 450 watts. So that is the reason why I don't believe this is true. I think this is fake news. It cannot be rated above 450 watts because, I mean, the only way they can get away with this is if they literally say that the user must have at minimum an 1100 watt power supply. Otherwise, it will not pull more than 450. It's capped inside the VBIOS based off of the wattage of the power supply. So, that's how it works. If it doesn't work that way, then whoever designed their card, like if it's an AIB card, for example, they're not following the spec, because the spec is very clear in how the sense wires are supposed to work. So I have a whole video explaining this. So if you're using a 850 watt power supply, you're not going to be pulling 600 watts no matter what on the connector, because the VBIOS is designed to power limit to 450, because it's supposed to be able to read I think they do it by looking, not the ripple, I forget what the rail is that they look at, but it's based off of a certain connection that sense wire uses to determine whether it's both of them are active or both of them are, or if one of them is there and one of them is missing, then it will limit it to a certain wattage. And it depends on which one, because it can either be limited to, well, it can actually be limited all the way down to 150 watts. So, yeah. So that's how it works. So that's why I don't believe this 550 watt thing. The 5090 will be a 450 watt, and the 5080 will be either 300 to 350 watt. That's more realistic. So let's see, why are they saying featured a D variant for China, designs being finalized. There was a 400 watt cooling module case earlier, but it was currently in a cancellation. As for 600 watt cooling module, it has now stopped, and the module manufacturer has confirmed that NVIDIA has currently, okay. Perhaps 400 and 600 are the maximum of the radiator. In fact, yeah, see, they're talking about the cooling. They're not talking about the actual power draw. In fact, the TGP of the 5090 are this and this, respectively. If there are no surprises, the Blackwell architecture are scheduled to be officially launched in September. Wait, this month? If it is, as our informant told us, there will soon be more information on the internet for reference. So apparently they're supposed to, well, okay, I don't know who this is. Someone from Bench Life said they're launching this month. So I don't know if that's true. Because, okay, well, I mean, it could happen, considering we're only in like the second week of September, but there's only 2 weeks left. So I don't know if this is for real. $50.90. Okay. Tech outlet reports that this is planned for the official design. See, all these rumors seem so confusing. Like, this one says that they're launching this month. This one says that they're finalizing this month. In addition to that, it is also reported that NVIDIA will prepare the D variants for China. Previously, NVIDIA only released D as a China exclusive. to comply with export regulations. I don't even know, to this day, I still don't even know what the difference between a 4090D and a regular 4090 is. I still don't even know what that means. Like 4090D, like what is that? Like a China exclusive? Like what is this? What does that even mean? Anyway, on the power consumption side, it is reported that the TGPs of the 5090 and 5080, okay, they've said that like 3 times already. So this is why is this article repeating itself? Whoever this is, some rando on Twitter is like, what BenchLife said is that 5080 and 5090 are scheduled to officially finalize the design in September, not officially launch in September. If there are no surprises. Then a Korean person says, if there are no surprises, the Blackwell GPU architecture, GeForce RTX 5090 and 5080 are scheduled to be officially launched in September. How do you go from finalizing the design in September to immediately launching in September and bypassing anything that has to do with supply chain? Like, I don't know, man. A lot of this stuff, it feels like these people are just having like some. This is almost like an AI is talking to another AI, and they're just. It's like Gen AI is happening. They're just like having a conversation with each other, and these aren't actual people. Furthermore, it's reported that the 5090D will be available in China at the end of January after a formal announcement at CES. So, do you know this? Do you know about how weird this sounds? Do you know why this sounds weird? Okay, for those that don't know, CES stands for Consumer Electronics Show. This is a show that takes place in January in the United States, and it's typically for like the Western markets. So why would Nvidia announce a China exclusive 5090D at a US trade show? Do you see, it almost sounds like this entire article is written by AI. I'm starting to suss out some AI things about the way this is written. Yes, you're going to announce a Chinese exclusive product for the Chinese market at a US trade show in Vegas. Because that makes a lot of sense. What? This is the most sus article I've ever read. Like, it's just like full of random rumors. Like, what is this? If the designs are already being finalized this month, then we should get something in the coming months. Just a teaser. If not, well, then we could stick with a 25 rumor. 2025 rumor. Oh, this is old. This is from July. Blackwell gaming GPUs reportedly launching at CES. Well, this is not really this is not anything out of the ordinary, considering typically what they do at the CES is they'll show off like the 70, the 60, because those are the ones that they typically do in that part of the year. So that still makes sense. But the 5090, 5080, that shouldn't be like a CES thing at all. That should be launching this year. Man, the more every time I dig into the RTX 50 series news, it always just sounds like a bunch of nonsense at the end of the day. Like, it's like people just making things up. It sounds so fake. Like, on the one hand, someone says they're launching this month, which that to me sounds really fake. Then someone's like, oh, they're gonna debut it at CES, the 5090D. Announcing it at a US trade show, but it's a Chinese exclusive. Like, does anybody understand why this doesn't sound real? Anyway, so I guess that's it for the 5080. There's really not much more to say Nothing has changed. Like, all the rumors are basically still the same. They're still all over the place, and it just seems like a whole bunch of nonsense. So anyway, that's 50 series. Okay, RDNA4. Moving on. RDNA4. Okay. Wait, this one's 4 days ago. This one's 3 days ago? Okay. AMD expected to launch at least 4 Navi 48 and Navi 44 GPU SKUs in RDNA4 Radeon RX 8000 lineup. So yesterday, it was reported that AMD will be shifting the priority from the high end to the enthusiast market to the more mainstream audience, which is something that the company has tried in the past with its Polaris and the RDNA1. So if you guys remember the RX 480 and then a year later the RX 580, those GPUs were very successful for AMD. Like, that was probably their most successful product launch in a long time in that era. And that was the RX 480 launched on June 29th of 2016. The RX 580 was like a year later. I think it was like April, May of 2017. So, but that was like it was like a refreshed version of Polaris. Then they did RDNA1 in 2019 with the 5700 XT. And that was also very successful. I don't know if that was as successful as the Polaris cards, because there's still a lot of people, believe it or not, there's a lot of people that still have RX 580s and RX 570s. They made a lot of them because they were cheap, and they were actually very good at mining crypto back in the day, and that's the reason why, like, you can find a ton of these cards all over the used market, because they were probably used for crypto mining, and they were probably used in a lot of budget pre-builds, because they were very low power, and they were pretty performant, and they offered 8 gigabytes, all under $300. So those were pretty good GPUs. So it looks like AMD at the surface, it looks like they're going back to that. And if you guys remember, a few months ago, I did a live stream on one of these episodes of Tech Thursdays. We talked about how AMD essentially has kind of like, they have like an A team and a B team where they kind of leapfrog. They're basically developing the same product, but they're like working on different generations. So, like, one would do RDNA1, the other one might be doing RDNA2, then the one that did RDNA1. You see what I'm saying? So, the team that does the more, like, innovative stuff is the ones that they brought chiplets to Ryzen, but then the more innovative team that did the GPUs did chiplets to RDNA3. So it's kind of that is what's happening here. So it's almost like, I wouldn't be surprised if the product team that worked on Polaris was the same team that worked on RDNA1. Likewise, I wouldn't be surprised if the team that did RDNA2 is doing RDNA4. And then the one that did RDNA1 might be doing, well, so RDNA1 was monolithic, RDNA2 was monolithic. I think the same team did both. I think the one that did chiplets was the one that also was previously doing the GCN stuff, because they're doing the more, like, we're going to change it up. So now they're going back to more of the traditional monolithic approach, like we saw with RDNA2 and RDNA1. So I think that same team is going to come out with the RDNA4. And then the team that does the more innovative stuff is probably going to do dedicated ray tracing hardware, not running them in the shaders, which is the way they've always done it so far. And we won't really see that until RDNA 5. At least I think so, if the rumors are to be believed. But that's going to be a while from now. So it's this to me, reading this, I keep thinking it's like, okay, this is AMD, it's like it's repeating history, and it's like we're back in 2015. It's like we went back in time 9 years ago, and here we are, and essentially the 7900 XTX is like the RX or the R9 Fury, and it's like next. So you guys see what I'm saying? So like the Fury was 2015, then they did the Polaris stuff in 2016, which wasn't really faster than Fury. Fury was actually faster than the 480 in rasterization. I mean, there was no ray tracing back then, but Polaris used significantly less power. It was like something like half the electricity or something. So Polaris is an efficiency play, and it is marketed to the mainstream, whereas Fury was a high-end, marketed to the enthusiasts. So basically what I see happening is it's a repeat of this sort of it's this sort of thing happening again. So RDNA4 is going to be like the RX 480, and if you guys remember, the RX 480 was not as fast as a Fury. In fact, if we go to Tech Power Up, we can go and look at the R9 Fury. The R9 Fury is this, and the RX 480 is, okay, well, let's do it this way. So RX 480 is like 150 watts, 150 watt CDP, and the R9 Fury is 10% faster. 10% faster. So, what does that mean? Does that mean that the 8800 XT, which is RDNA4, is going to be like close to an XTX, but it will be like the XTX is still like 10% faster than the 8800 XT. I wonder if that's what's going to happen with RDNA4, because you have to remember, the XTX is almost 2 years old. It'll be 2 years old in December. So that 2-year-old technology, or that 2-year-old performance amount that card offers, like, it's now 2 years old. So if that is 10% faster than a brand new RDNA4, that seems to be in line with the narrative of this article, in the sense that AMD is expected to go back to mainstream because they're not really getting anywhere. Like this article is saying, they're not really gaining any traction. They're not gaining any significant market share in the gaming market, I guess, because the GPU, basically the Radeon brand is considered like the gaming market for them. Ryzen is more general purpose, so that's not really aligned to gaming the way Radeon is. So, and the Radeon brand is the one that has been struggling, where Ryzen has not really struggled. So that's why they're just doing this. It's almost like they're going back in time like 9 years. That's what this feels like. Or depending on how you look at it, it's like going back 5 years. Or no, like 5.5 years. The only positive for RDNA4 is way better ray tracing against 700 XTX. Yeah, but which would you rather have at the end of the day? Would you have better rasterization, or would you have better RT? Like, which one actually matters more at the end of the day? You would take the rumor. What rumor? Oh, the rumor on this? Oh, how many GPUs? Well, it's like 2 GPUs each. That's believable. It's always 2. Everything there. It's like, okay, guys. It's like what is it? The Jedi or something. It's like the Jedi and the Sith. There's always 2. There's always 2 within each family. There's always 2, meaning if you take Navi 48, there are 2 Navi 48s, and there are 2 Navi 44s. So that total is 4 GPUs. This is where Paint comes in to this stream. Now we enter Paint mode to illustrate this. So, Radeon GPUs come in 2s, I guess. So there are always 2. So you have something called the XT. So internally, within the Radeon product team, within the Radeon development team, you have 2. You have when they build these GPUs, there is the XT. And there is, does anybody know what the other one is? Maybe I should not have even put that on the board yet. Who knows what the second one is known as? Internally. Does anybody know the secret code inside Radeon? No, it's not XTX. That's a good try, though. XTX, no. No. That's a good attempt. We'll talk about XTX in a little bit, but no, that's not what we're looking for. XTX is known as the 3rd. That is a more advanced special. That's a special case. But we're talking about the 2s. I always think of Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi Master and the Jedi Apprentice. They move in 2s. Or, like, if we're talking Sith, because technically Radeon is Team Red, so we should be talking in Sith speech. So you have the Sith Master and you have the Sith Apprentice. They always come in 2s. Wow, no one seems to know. Interesting. Okay, the answer is XL. XL. There's an XT and there's an XL. The XT is the full die. XT is the full die. So this would be, for example, a full Navi 44. Full die Navi 44 would be the XT die. The cut down die would be the XL. These are the internal markings that AMD's Radeon division uses. And these terminologies, I don't know exactly what XT and XL actually stand for, other than the fact that the XT is the full die and the XL is the cut down die. But these terminologies are not actual AMD terminology. This terminology stems back to a company. This goes back to a company called ATI. ATI, the original company that started the Radeon brand. I don't know why we're talking about ATI all of a sudden, but the point that I'm making is that Radeon GPUs always come in 2s. There is always an XT, there is always an XL. So no matter what, you can always expect. So if you get a rumor or something about, oh, Navi 44, you can always assume that there will be 2 variants of a given GPU. So there will be an XT variant, which will be the full one, and there will be a cut down one, which is the XL. Long ago, when Radeon was ATI, not AMD, when they were ATI, Radeon GPUs were sold in the market using XT and XL branding. Now, they also introduced some additional, like, I guess they had the Pro variant, and then they had the XTX variant. Those are kind of special ones. So those are special ones that go outside of this. But in general, there's always going to be two. There could be more than two, but there's always going to be two. So sometimes you can get an XTX. An XTX is like an extreme version of the full die. But that's not always true with every GPU generation. For example, the RX 480 was a, what was the name of that series? Ellesmere? I don't know if I'm spelling that name correctly. Ellesmere or something. Ellesmere XT. Or also known as, I guess, Polaris 10? But this was the XT. Or we could just say, we can just simplify it, Polaris XT. The RX 470 was the Polaris XL. So this is what these were internally. So meaning when I'm talking about XT and XL, I'm not talking about the actual product names, because the way AMD does product names today with Radeon, it doesn't always indicate what is the XT, what is the XL. But one example that we can use is the, I'm trying to think here, the 60, yeah, we can use the 6800 series. So the RX 6800 XT was the, what was it, Navi 21 XT variant. This was the XT variant. So what do you think this one was? The 6800, which is very similar to the PlayStation 5 Pro. This is Navi 21 XL. So the 6800 non-XT is the XL. It is the cut down variant. However, as we know, AMD had a secret. They had a secret up there, like I keep thinking of like the white Power Ranger from like Power Rangers. Like they were working on it in secret. No one was supposed to know about it. It was known as the biggest big Navi. Because remember, like people would call this one Big Navi. And this one was like the big, or what was this one supposed to be? Like Navi? Or they had, oh no, they had the, what was this one called? Big Navi? There was Big Navi. Because does everybody remember like the Wait for Navi memes? First it was Wait for Vega, then it was Wait for Navi. But they had like another one. They had like a special secret up their sleeve. The 6900 XT was the Navi 21 XTX. This one is also known as the biggest big Navi. The biggest big Navi. So this one is a special. They don't always do that. This is like the secret special one. So when they have a special, it's the XTX. But XTX is not always something that exists. It's not guaranteed for every GPU generation. So I think that so that brings us to Navi 48 and Navi 44. So basically RDNA4. So they're talking about going to mainstream. So going to mainstream is going to be about volume. It's going to be about like selling a lot of GPUs at a certain price point. that means that you can expect that there will be an XT variant and there will be an XL variant, and that means that there may not be an XTX special. There may only be two because they're going for high volume, lower cost, lower retail price points for consumers, which means they're not going to try to overcomplicate things with a super large die or a super large full die like an XTX, for example. So that's why I kind of think we're going to see XT and XL. So we're going to see, for example, this one would probably be called the RX 8800 XT. And this one would be called the RX 8800. Now, sometimes they do weird things. Like, for example, with RDNA4, they had stuff like, they had what? The RX 7800 XT and the RX 7700 XT. Now, in reality, if I remember correctly, this one was a Navi 32 or 33. I think 32. This one was also a Navi 32. But the difference is this one was a Navi 32 XT. This one was a Navi 32 XL. So this is the reason why I feel like AMD's naming convention used to be easier to understand, although these letters were very arbitrary in terms of, like, I feel like they didn't really resonate with the public. Like, people didn't really understand. They didn't always understand the difference. So eventually what they did was they stopped using this, and that's why they went through this entire era of, if you guys remember, they had the HD 7970. They had HD 7970. They had HD 7950. And what was this? This was a Tahiti XT. I'm thinking that, yeah, Tahiti XT. This was a Tahiti XL. So internally, even after they dropped the product names using these these letters, the actual product name, they still internally had these letters, but the public didn't know about it. Because it wasn't used in the official product name. Like, the product name was called 7970 and 7950. That's what the public saw. But internally, one of them was the full die, and the other one was the cut down die. And this persisted even after the brand changes, because remember, they did R9 290X and R9 290. This was Hawaii XT and Hawaii XL. They still did it back then. They still had the cut down. This is why I'm telling you guys, Radeon GPUs come in twos. There are always two. There are always two. And in the case of Navi 44, there will be two. So you can expect that. Sometimes there's a special. Sometimes there's a special. And the way, sometimes when the die is really, really big, they can do like a lot of different things. Like they can do, I'm trying to think of when they did an XTX back in the 2000s. They had like a, what was it? I think they had a X1950 XTX. I guess we'll just do X1950 XTX. And they had an X1950 XT. And they had I think they had an X1950 XL, or they called it Pro, which was the XL. So, you know, like they can cut the die up, because likewise, as we've seen with Navi 31, there's a lot. So there's the, what is it, RX 7900 XTX. This is Navi 31 XTX internally. Then they have RTX RX 7900 XT, which is the, I guess this one is considered the Navi 31 XT, which is weird because I would say this is XL. But then they have the RX 7900, what is it, the GRE? So what is this supposed to be? Navi 31 XL? But then it gets kind of complicated because there's also the Radeon W7800, which is a Navi 31. Actually, hold on. This one has more compute units than the GRE. How many compute units does GRE have? GRE is 60 compute? This one is a 70 compute. So what is this going to be? The Pro? Like, there's Pro, there's XL, there's XT, there's XTX. I think Pro is actually higher than... Oh, the GRE has 80? Okay, so then this... Okay, so then this is the Pro, and this is the XL. So yeah, sometimes they do this. They can do this. It's rare. They did this back in the 2000s. I'm forgetting. I'm drawing a blank. Because I know there was an X850 XT. There was an X850 XL. There was an X800 Pro. So they do these kind of things too. Although I forget if Pro is better than XL or if XL is better than Pro. That one I get kind of mixed up. The point that I'm making is internally, this is the internal name. This is the external product name. So meaning this is what the consumers will see on the store shelves. But internally, when they're developing the graphics cards and they haven't actually figured out what they want to call this thing yet, they use internal names. And they use these XTX, XT, sometimes Pro and XL. Well, there's always XL, but sometimes they got Pro in there. Sometimes they have XTX in there. But most of the time, they have XT and they have XL. And internally, that's what they use to determine the product names so that anybody on the team can look at the product, and if they see that, oh, it's an XL, they immediately know that it is a cut down variant of whatever that GPU is supposed to be. You feel like an intern at AMD? So what am I supposed to be then? If you're the intern, what am I? I'm your senior? I'm the one training you on the job? Anyway. So anyway, going back to our discussion about RDNA4. I think there will be an XT. And that also means there'll be an XL. What I don't know is if the name of the XL will be called RX 8800 or will it be called RX 8700 XT. They could do either one of these because they have shown that they can do both. They had the 6800 with RDNA2 XL, and then they did the 7700 XT, which was RDNA3 XL. RX 8600 for XL. Yeah, that would be an XL. And then... Was there something... Hold on. Where's the... Okay, because see, look. Here's another thing, too. And just to prove I'm not making any of this up, check this out. There you go. Polaris 10 XT. This is an RX 480. So an RX 480 is an XT GPU. That means this is a fully unlocked die. It is not a cut down die. This is the full die with the 2304 shaders. And it is the XT variant. If we want to look at the XL variant, we would go to the 470. RX 470. Now it has 2048 instead of 2304. And sure enough, they're using the Pro SKU instead of the XL SKU. So remember what I told you guys. There are a total of 4 different ones. Sometimes there could be a 5th one. We haven't talked about the 5th one. But there is XT, there's Pro, there's XL, there's XTX, and there's KXTX. So this means, the Pro means this is a cut down die. So let's look at some of these other ones. Let's look at the R9 290X. This is the Hawaii GPU. 2,816 cores. 290X. 512-bit bus. Hawaii XT. So what I want to know is this one the Pro or is this one the XL? Okay, so they're using Pro again. Okay, interesting. Okay, so XL's probably more cut down than Pro. I wonder, see, what I don't know is, does Pro and XL indicate a certain amount of cut down? Like a certain percentage of the cores have been cut off. You know, like, is Pro less cut off than XL, or is it more cut off or cut down than Pro? That would be interesting to know. Yeah, this was a big monolithic die. That is a big die. TSMC, 28 nanometer. GCN 2.0 architecture, 438 millimeters squared. That is a big die. PCI Gen 3, $400. So now if we go up to the, what is this? The Fury? This one was called Volcanic Islands as well. That's weird how the generation was Volcanic Islands. So this is Fiji. Fiji had even more cores on a 4096-bit bus with HBM memory. There it is. This is the predecessor to the chiplet design. This was the first one, 2015. This GPU was in the summer of 2015. I still have my R9 Fury. It's somewhere. It was in a YouTube video, but it's somewhere. All right, okay, see, they're going with the Pro name again. Interesting. So I guess it depends how much they cut the die to indicate whether it's a Pro or an XL. That's interesting. Because XT is always the full. Like if you go to the Fury X, the Fury X had the full 4096. This was the XT. Fiji XT. So there was Fiji XT and there was Fiji Pro. So there was no Fiji XL. So I'm going to guess that the Pro is less cut down than the XL. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the difference between a Fury and a Fury X and a 290 and a 290X is a smaller gap compared to for example, a 7900 XT, which is an well, wait a minute, hold on, this is an XT, that's weird. Yeah, that's because they had a super die, they had an XTX, that's why. So anyway, this is the XT, but then they also had GRE. GRE is, see, there it is, XL. Interesting. Okay. So the GRE is an XL, which means the GRE is the cut down variant of Navi 31, and the 7900 XT is considered the full die. But they basically did an even larger full die, or like a full die that had even more cores enabled than the full die, and that one is the XTX. So the XTX is like it's like a Super Saiyan version of an XT. No, it doesn't change the pattern at all. It's always the same. There's always two. This is the second. The first was the XT, and the GRE is the second. This is the XL. So this still follows what I was saying earlier. It just so happens that this one is the XL and the XT is the XT. So, yeah. Because the XTX is not an XT. The XTX is an XTX. So remember that. So the thing that I was wondering was, is this going to be a Pro or is this going to be an XL? So this one is called an XL. It's not it's not a Pro. So it depends on how much they cut on the die. I think the Pro is less cut down than the... I mean, someone could do the math. It's not too hard. Like, just do the math. The ratio of this versus a 7900 XT, and then go look at a 290 and a 290X, or a Fury and a Fury X, and do the ratio of how many cores are deactivated on the Pro variant, and that'll give you the amount. I have a feeling that the XL is more cut down than a Pro. But hold on a second, I could be wrong, because I think I just realized something. Hold on. If this is someone said it earlier, I think it was like 80. Yeah, if this is 80 compute units, this is 80 compute units. So now, W7800, this is the secret Navi 31 with 4,480 cores on a 256-bit bus with 32 gigs of RAM. This is also Navi 31. So this is probably... And they don't say what it is. Well, that could be just... That could end up being Tech Power Up just didn't put it in. But this is this might be the Pro. If this is the XL, this is the Pro. Which means the Pro is more cut down than an XL. That's what that looks like. Because this one's what, 72? Or no, 70 CUs? Where's the CU count on here? Oh, 70 compute units. 70 compute units. So this is the most cut down of all the Navi 31s. So now if we put it all together, if we go put everything together, actually I had them labeled. I just have to swap these around. So basically this needs to go down here. Like this is the Pro and the XL is the GRE. This is the XL. There. We figured it out. Okay, well that's the solution. So there you go. That is the entire Navi 33 family. But what you can expect is Radeon GPUs always come in twos. So meaning if AMD was only going to launch 2 of these in the entire product family, it would have been the 7900 XT and the 7900 GRE. Now that I know this, after doing this little exercise here, teaching all the interns and stuff, like, now I realize the GRE is not going away, guys. I don't think the GRE is going away, because the GRE is actually the XL. And the XL is the typical cut down. So, yeah, that's normal. If anything, this could end up getting discontinued, and this is sold in a much lower volume in the professional market. So these are the ones that are actually, it's interesting. Although it's kind of weird when you have an XTX, because the XTX kind of breaks the mold, especially when it's like they sell a lot of it. I mean, we saw this with the last generation. Like if we do the full, what was it, like RX 6900 XT. This was the Navi 21 XTX. So you had Navi 21 XTX. You had RX 6800 XT, which was Navi 21 XT. And then you had RX 6800, which was Navi 21 XL. I'm pretty sure it was XL. And what was the professional card called? What was that? The W69? Yeah, they had a W6900X Pro, or a Pro. Oh, that one was just the same as the... Yeah, never mind. That one was for Apple. Yeah, never mind. Okay, so that doesn't really matter. No, it was not. That's another one. That's a different one. So you're talking about what it means to go beyond. The RX 6950 XT. This was the most secret special GPU. This is called a Navi 21K XTX. This is a K XTX. It's not an XTX. This is even more special than the special, because the XTX is the special. This is supposed to be the most premium, best, full die possible. But if they want to do some, like, super special, like the super uber special of an XTX to go beyond the XTX, they create KXTX. And that was the 6950 XT. So that is the KXTX. Yeah, you compare those. You compare any CPU with any GPU. 6950 felt more like a refresh. Yeah, because they didn't really need to launch it, but they kind of did a refresh. Yeah. So one way to think of this is kind of like the NVIDIA Super. If you guys are familiar with NVIDIA Super branding, the 6950, the 6750, and the 6650, those are kind of like the super variants for the Radeon cards. So that's known as the K variant. This is the K variant. Another way that I can frame this is this is kind of like Intel's KS. This is like a KS, like a 14900 KS, a 13900 KS. The 6950 XT is like a KS from Intel on the CPU side. Or you can think of it like an NVIDIA Super Edition refresh. So they're very rare. They don't do a lot of those. Those are very, very rare. But yeah, no, this one was the full die. The 6900 XT was the full Navi 21 die, and that is why internally it was known as XTX. Now, I want to make one thing clear. The XTX doesn't always have to be the full die. Meaning, if they only plan on like 2 dies, the XT typically will be the full die. And the XL or the Pro will be the cut down die. So I want to make that clear. Just because they do, just because they create a GPU family like Navi 32, for example, that doesn't mean that there's going to always be an XTX. But what there always will be is an XT and an XL. Those are absolutes. XTX is optional. They may not always create an XTX variant, but they always will create an XT variant. So that's why I say Radeon GPUs coming too, is because you can always expect this sort of thing. It doesn't matter what. There'll always be like 2. There won't always be an XTX. There won't always be there definitely won't always be a KXTX, because those things are like extremely rare. But yeah, so in theory they could make a 8950 XT. Yeah. Well, what would that mean? Because sometimes they do weird things, like this. You know why this is confusing on so many levels? I don't like this way of doing the branding name. I don't like seeing an XT in the product name when the actual die is not an XT die. So this is bad. Like, I hope AMD never does that again, because that is confusing. To consumers, they may not care, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you rather have like this? Or would you rather have like this? That versus this. Like, which is actually better? I personally think, well, okay, hold on. What I meant to say was this. That or this. Forget about this stuff. Meaning, I personally think it's better to have the number, so like 68. 68. They're both 68. They both align to Navi 21 internally. They're both mapped to the same die. I don't like when they do like 78 and 77, yet they both map to 32. That, to me, is confusing. So I don't like that. Now, the average consumer who has no knowledge of how AMD does these things internally, meaning the average gamer who just wants to buy a GPU so they can play World of Warcraft, The War Within, and Genshin Impact, they don't really care about this stuff, and maybe Fortnite. They don't really care about these names. Like, they don't care. So maybe this is easier for them to understand. So, versus, you know, like, this stuff. Like, you know. But I think for enthusiasts, I think the RDNA4 naming was better. But maybe for the average gamer, maybe the way they did the RDNA3 naming was better. But I don't know about that. Because they certainly did a whole bunch of like 7900 mapped to Navi 31. In fact, they even did like a W78 mapping to Navi 31, which I don't really know if I agree with that either, but still, they did that. So the simpler the better, the higher the number, the higher the FPS. Yeah, but this gets confusing because, you know, like what if they wanted to do this? What is this? What is that supposed to be? What is this supposed to be? Now, I know this doesn't exist, but if they wanted to make this, now what? Because this is their cut down. They've named their cut down an XT. See why that's dumb? They went and named a cut down die XT when XT is supposed to mean full die. See? So this isn't really a problem for consumers. This is a problem for AMD internally. Met says the RDNA4. Yeah, I think I agree. I think the RDNA4 naming was actually easier to understand. How can it be XL when this is XL? This cannot be XL if this is already XL. You see what I'm saying? Like, what if they wanted to do it like a... You see, they created a weird mess with RDNA3. The RDNA3 had like so many SKUs, and it was like, there's the GRE SKU. I mean, the fact that there's like 4 different Navi 31s. Now, granted, one of them is professional only, but still. Like, they cut this thing down like 3 times. No, 4 times. Because there's an XTX. So it's like... I don't know. Like, to me, this is kind of a mess from a branding. Although, if you look at NVIDIA, it's just as stupid. Like, it's not like NVIDIA's any better. Because now, like, especially with the Super nonsense... Because now you have like the 4080, the 4080 Super, but the 4080 Super is the full die for the 103. So that technically is the TI. So it gets really dumb. NVIDIA already screwed up the naming on their end, like way worse than AMD. But especially like, well, basically since RTX became a thing and they started moving away from GTX. But we're not going to talk about the NVIDIA branding on this stream because we already... Well, we'll do that as we get closer to the 50 series launch. Meaning we will do a similar deep dive on GeForce because that one is like really weird compared to this. Because this is kind of easy to understand, like for a beginner. All you gotta know is that there's like a full and there's a cut down. That's all you really gotta know. And sometimes they do like a special souped up XTX, but that's not always guaranteed. So that's really all you got to remember from this is like there's XT, there's XL, and sometimes there's a super XTX. That's basically it. They could make 7750 XT, but see, then that's gonna be like another thing. XT is the full die, yeah. Yeah, no, we're not going to dive into the NVIDIA stuff because, yeah, man, that is a whole nother 2 hours to the live stream, and we've already been live for over 3 hours. So, we'll cover NVIDIA in a different live stream, but yeah, we will eventually talk about that one because that one, you basically need a master's degree minimum, if not a PhD, to understand all the inner workings and all the different, like, You basically need an Excel spreadsheet to sort all the NVIDIA stuff out. It's confusing. Like, it's confusing. And we aren't even talking about the professional, the Quadro, and now how it's not Quadro anymore, but it was, but internally it's still Quadro. Like, we're not even going to go there on this stream. So anyway, yeah, that'll be addressed as we get closer to the Blackwell launch. All right, lastly, I guess the last thing to talk about is is this the Apple thing? Yeah, this was the Apple GPU. Like, this is the thing. This is the Radeon Pro W6900X MPI. But anyway, I'm gonna go off on a tangent if I talk about that. So let's look at what is this? MSI unveil. Oh no, we talked about that last time. Were we gonna talk about motherboards? No, we talked about motherboards last time. So I guess one thing I'll say about motherboards. For the AMD motherboards, I think the Zen 5 launch for the average consumer would have been better if they launched X870 and X870E at the same time as the CPUs. I already know like 3 or 4 individuals who tried to upgrade to Zen 5 recently. One of them bought a motherboard off of Amazon and the BIOS did not support the CPU. So that individual gave up and returned the motherboard. And they're probably going to wait until X870 at this point. because they bought a pretty decent X670E motherboard, but the BIOS was like super old, and they didn't want to do BIOS flashback for some reason, even though they could have just done BIOS flashback. Anyway, the point that I'm making is there's a lot of people out there that are too scared or too unwilling to update their BIOS on the motherboard. And that is going to really hurt the image of the Ryzen 9000 CPUs, because there's a lot of people that are curious about them. And unfortunately, the motherboard landscape is a huge mess. Like, I don't know of any motherboard that actually has the BIOS out of the box. The Micro Center bundle, I can tell you guys, the Micro Center bundle does not, like the Gigabyte motherboard that comes with a 9700X has a BIOS from March. So even the bundle from Micro Center requires the BIOS update. So later on, a month from now, this whole thing will be resolved because X870 and X870E will be available. And I think that will solve the whole, like, oh, I'm too afraid to update my BIOS, I'm just going to return it, and I'll just wait until X870 comes out. Because I feel like this whole thing could have been avoided if they launched the motherboards with the CPUs, like, at the same time. Like, to me, it's really bizarre the way this launch played out. On top of that, you had, like, reviewers, like, I don't know what they were saying. Like, the whole reviews for Zen 5 were so off the wall, random, all over the place. You had Tom's Hardware saying it was great. You had Hardware Unboxed saying it was terrible. You had, like, everyone else in between. So I myself tested both the... I mean, I got them right here. Like, we're actually streaming on the 950X. So I tested... The review for this is up on the channel. The review for the 9700X is also on the channel. I tested them both on Windows 11. And they were both fine. So I don't know what problems people had. I know there was the whole thing with 24 second half something whatever, 23, 24 2H, 23 2, some whatever thing. I don't know. I didn't do any of that stuff. What I can tell you guys is the way I did my review for both CPUs, all I did was do all the benchmarks on Zen 4, then I take out the Zen 4 CPU, I put in the Zen 5 CPU, I redo the thermal paste, I put the cooler back on, I boot into Windows, I load the XMP, whatever, I boot into Windows, and then I just run all the benchmarks, and then I'm done. And that was it. And then I posted the results. Did I install chipset drivers? No. Did I install Windows updates? No. I didn't do any of that. All I did was, as is, put the CPU in, do an in-socket upgrade on the latest BIOS, set XMP, go into Windows, do the stuff, and then you're done. That's all I did. And I got a decent uplift. So I don't know what everyone else did. I don't know what AMD told everybody to do. I didn't listen to what AMD said to do. I did things my way, and I got, like, decent performance uplifts. So, I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know. I feel like, personally, as far as Zen 5 goes, the X870 boards should have launched closer to the Zen 5 launch. If not in the same day, then they literally should have launched at the end of August. Like, this whole, like, end of September thing, to me, is ridiculous. And it makes AMD look silly, to be honest. And I'm somebody who can work around, like, BIOS updates. That's not a problem for me. I'm thinking of it from somebody who is new to building a PC. They want to get into gaming on PC. They want to get into it as a hobby. So they're new, and they don't know. And they go and they buy a bundle from Micro Center, and guess what? They put it together, they turn on the power, and what happens? Nothing happens. Black screen. Nothing. It isn't even memory training. It's just sitting there, like it's dead. So what do you think they're going to think? What do you think somebody who is new to building a PC is going to think when they sit there and they're like, nothing's happening? Did I do something wrong? They're going to check, like, did I plug all the power cables in? Did I plug all the fan head? Like, is it overheating? Did I do the thermal paste wrong? People are going to freak out. They're going to think that they screwed something up, or it's defective, or the RAM is faulty, or the CPU is faulty, or the motherboard's DOA. They're going to like get so confused, and they're going to try a bunch of things, and like nothing's going to work. Then they're going to take it back to the store and return it. I mean, that's basically what's going to happen for someone who doesn't actually have enough experience, recognizing that, oh, maybe I need to update the BIOS. Oh, X670 and B650 is actually meant for Zen 4. Maybe I need to update the BIOS. See, so the whole thing about buying Zen 5 and then buying a last gen motherboard is not a good look. It's not a good look. It's only good if you're someone who wants to nickel and dime and save money on buying a discounted last gen motherboard with a brand new Zen 5 CPU. So, I don't know. The fact that, to be fair, I showed how to, yeah, and I have videos on the channel that show exactly what to do, and I cover all 4 motherboard brands. All of them. So, anyway, but someone who watches my content's not going to have that problem. But even if someone's new and they watch those videos that I put up, there's still going to be some sense of anxiety, of stress, of uncertainty, that they might screw something up, that they might do something wrong. You know what I'm saying? So even if I have the video up there, like the fact that someone has, it's one thing to show somebody what to do. It's a whole nother thing to actually do that. Like, you watch someone play a piano perfectly, now you go play that same piano song. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's one thing to watch somebody do something, then you actually do it yourself. Like, watch somebody change their brake pads on their car by themselves. Now you go change the brake pads on the car yourself. Like, see, that's the sort of stuff. That's what we're talking about here when we're talking about, like, I feel like the average tech enthusiast, they're not looking at it big picture. Like an average gamer who just wants to put together a new PC. But they don't have an insane amount of experience. So, yeah. For new PC builders, they should have launched the motherboards with it. When you got 12900K and it didn't know crap about the BIOS. Yeah, well, I'm surprised 12900. Oh, well. Oh, what you? Oh, you didn't know. Okay, I see. Yeah, 12900K would have worked at launch because 12900K required a new motherboard. See, and that's the thing. Like, 13th gen Intel, anyone who bought 13th gen 2 years ago and tried to pair it up with a Z590 or a Z690 would have run into the same problem. However, they didn't have to run into that problem. You know why? Because guess what? When Intel launched 13th gen, they launched Z790 the same day. So it's like, you could literally, like, take it from me. Somebody who bought the 13900K on launch day in October of 2022, I wanted to bring Intel to DDR5 because I had already experienced DDR5 on a 7950X. So I was thinking like, okay, am I just going to buy this chip and update my DDR4 Z690 board? Or am I going to buy a new motherboard, a Z790 motherboard with DDR5 memory? And I opted to end up doing that because I wanted to make videos showcasing Intel on DDR5. Otherwise, I would be using a 13900K with DDR4. Meanwhile, all the new AMD stuff is on DDR5. So that's why I ended up buying a Z790. But I'm saying this as someone who bought 13900K on launch day. Guess what? The brand new motherboards, Z790, which is meant to go with 13th gen, were available day one. So people who were buying 13th gen, as long as they bought Z790, they did not have anything to worry about in terms of updating the BIOS. So I don't know. All I'm saying is, to me, like it makes AMD look silly. I don't want to say AMD's incompetent, but it makes the product team who's responsible for launching like Zen 5, they look silly in my eyes. If I was the product manager, or if I was on that team, like in charge of the go-to-market launch for Zen 5, I would have never signed off on launching it like this. And then the whole, like, that 1 week delay, and then telling reviewers about chipset this and that. And no, that to me, like, that's one thing. But at the end of the day, the motherboards not launching together is creating a bad look. It's what I call self-implosion. It's like they're damaging their own brand. And it's hilarious. Well, it's not hilarious. It's really sad and alarming, because Intel, so I read this somewhere, like Intel, it was on one of my videos, somebody commented, Intel literally like fell in the hole. Like Intel was climbing a mountain, and they're like scaling a cliff, and they like slip and they're falling into a hole. AMD is climbing the mountain, but now like AMD like also is falling, and now Intel's starting to come out of the hole. So it's like, what I mean by that, what they meant by that is Intel, everybody's aware of Intel's CPU degradation problem with the voltage, the Vmin calling for over 1.5 volts up to 1.6 volt excursions and causing damage to the silicon prematurely. I did like 2 videos on how, like, one was how to fix it using power limits. The other one was how to actually do the BIOS update to fix it permanently. Supposedly, it's supposed to be a permanent fix. The 0x129 whatever code. But it's hilarious because, like, Intel literally handed AMD a free pass of, here, go steal market share from us. Go and steal market share from us. We're literally handing you market share because of our own incompetence with our CPUs burning up and killing themselves. So go ahead, get all these people to convert to Zen. Go to Ryzen, launch your Zen 5. We don't care. We're stupid. We're incompetent. We're damaging our own CPUs. So you go ahead and take all the market share. That's basically what Intel did back in July, June, whatever. What does AMD do? They launched Zen 5 in the way that they did, and it's like, what did you guys just do? It's like, what did you do? You had a golden opportunity. They literally handed you that Willy Wonka chocolate factory ticket, and you lit a lighter and you just disintegrated it. It's like, AMD is too busy with the enterprise. Well, that's what a lot of people seem to say, because that's where all the margins are. So I get that. And there's also a big push into mobile now with the HX370. But, I mean, for my own personal testing with Ryzen 9000, what I can tell you guys, like, I like overclocking and tuning Zen 5. I didn't really care to tune Zen 4 that much because of how it behaved with the whole 95 degrees, blah, 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 all that stuff. Like, the 9000 series is way more fun to mess with Curve Optimizer, Curve Shaper, PBO. The fact that you can run it on an air cooler at stock and you don't ever see it go to 95 degrees anymore. That was a thing with the 7950X. That doesn't happen with the 9950X at stock. So that was very nice to see. So it's so much better, well behaved. It doesn't use as much power at stock compared to the 7950X. So my experience with Zen 5 has been positive. I like overclocking again. I was kind of turned off by the way Intel uses 300 watts and goes to 102 degrees, and it cooks itself and it kills itself with voltage, and then so you can't overclock it basically, and then AMD, like, you can undervolt with curve optimizer, but then you try to do there's only a variable margin there, and there wasn't really any way to work around what to do with low frequency and idling when you had the voltage pushed too low. So it was kind of like, it's like, yeah, you can do curve optimizer, but it doesn't really do a whole lot. Now, with the Ryzen 9000, it's actually pretty good when you use Curve Optimizer, especially in conjunction with Curve Shaper, because there's a lot more margin, especially with the changes they made with the architecture. So the single thread performance is way better than Zen 4, and I think a lot of people overlooked that. I think some of the stuff that you guys saw in the reviews that what other people were showing was probably because they were testing with the whole, like, the Windows 11 thing that didn't have the updated branch prediction and all that stuff. So I don't know. I think there's going to be some newer reviews that come out later that are going to show the actual way it's supposed to perform, because my results, I think, are representative of what Tom's Hardware was saying and even what AMD was saying. The only thing that was different was the gaming performance was not nearly at what AMD showed. But again, I wasn't testing with a sysadmin account. Like, I was testing with a regular admin account, which is not the same. So, because it's like, that's not realistic, right? Like, that's kind of a dumb way to test. So, anyway. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. At this point, I don't know if I'm going to get a new motherboard. I don't know if I need one. The only thing that I'm interested in seeing with these new motherboards is whether or not 4 sticks of DDR5 works better on the newer motherboards. Because so far, from what I have done, looking at all these different boards, Asus probably will have better support for 4 sticks because Asus is using a newer trace layout style. They're calling it Nitro Path for DDR5. And then MSI, with at least with the Godlike, although I don't think I'm going to consider the Godlike because I think the Godlike is going to be stupidly expensive. But the Godlike is a 10-layer PCB, which means the Godlike, in theory, should get better memory overclocking potential. And keep in mind, when we say overclocking memory, that doesn't just mean trying to push above like 8,000 or whatever on 2 sticks. That also means running 4 sticks above 3,600. So keep that in mind. Anything above the spec, meaning if you're on Zen 5, if you're on 2 sticks of memory, anything above 5,600 is considered an overclock. And if you're on 4 sticks of memory, anything above 3,600 is considered an overclock. So with the current motherboards, I've been able to push 192 gigs of RAM at 6,000 megatransfers on an Aorus Master. I'm hoping, but that is with a lot of tweaks. That's with a lot of manual trial and error and stability testing, using things like MemTest and Y-Cruncher, and that requires a lot of time to tune using proct ODT and bus terminations and setting those things manually. And most people don't have any idea what I'm talking about or what I just said in how to actually get the 4.6 to work stable at 6,000, but especially at that capacity. But I'm hoping that the X870E with the advanced trace layouts and maybe more layers or whatever, at least in the case of the Godlike, maybe we'll see better 4-stick support, higher speeds on 4 sticks, as well as 4-stick single rank as well. So yeah, that's probably going to be it for this stream, though. I think that was pretty much everything. The only other thing I was going to say was Arrow Lake is coming out, but it got delayed for desktop again. So it's still supposed to launch in Q4, though. So it'll be interesting to see what Intel offers on desktop this time compared to what they currently offer with 14th gen, which will be a year old next month. And they're going to a new socket, and they'll have new motherboards. And we will be going over the Intel motherboards as we get closer to launch. As soon as we get past the X870E launch, expect to see content on X870E on this channel. But then sometime after that, we're going to start talking about Intel's motherboards as well. So I do plan to cover Arrow Lake. I'm not 100% sure like how that's going to go, because that could end up being just like Zen 5, because basically what we're seeing is, or what the rumors are saying is like 5 to 10% improvement, which is kind of in line with what Zen 5 was. So yeah, any expectation for 8000 series, we will see that. If we see RDNA4 at all this year, it will be at the very end of the year, which means December. Otherwise, you will see those GPUs in the first quarter of next year. They will announce something and they'll launch something, like probably in March or something. So yeah, I don't know the exact timeline on RDNA4, but I would imagine December will be the 2-year mark. So they'll need to do some kind of product announcement within the next quarter. So, and that's pretty much going to be it for this stream. Once again, guys, if you're new to this channel, do get subscribed. We talk about all these kind of things PC DIY based. We go in depth like we did today. Sometimes we do like history lessons. Apparently we do history lessons on this channel now. But yeah, that's what we do every Thursdays. Sometimes I do live streams on the weekend, usually a Friday evening or a Saturday evening. It depends on my schedule for the weekend. But yeah, on those streams, it's way more like open-ended, I guess. I don't really have an agenda. Like, there's no actual topics on the weekend stream. It's typically me playing a game that I'm trying to finish. So in this case, right now, it's Space Marines 2 or Black Myth Wukong. So anyway, that's going to be it. So we do this every Thursday. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks.